Right, this is the next episode of Summon and Insight. By the way, people might know, we hinted at it on the last episode. In theory, we're actually at about the 200th episode number, which is already pretty baller, like how many shows get to 200. And also, you can just look like the quality has just continued for years and years. But we're going to do it. Next week is when we're going to do like a sort of celebration episode. So we won't tell you what's going to happen, but there might be some special guests drop by and some things to reminisce and bring back the memories of the old days. And also, just thought I'd just drop this in there. TSM is dead. So the witch is dead. Ding dong, the witch is dead. The witch is dead. The witch is dead. Ding dong, the witch is dead. The witch is dead. Oh, yay. Because if people don't remember, I'll just throw this out there. I love, by the way, Monty, when my enemies don't just fail, they like actually say the most embarrassing thing in the context if they fail. Like people might know, don't worry, it's coming soon. The reason why I love that I've got it over Frankie, that she was sort of trying to virtue signal, but then it's absolutely backfired in her face. It's because other people, Monty, said specific things like, I wouldn't work with Neom if they were with Blast. So if Blast doesn't work with Neom, it doesn't really matter, you know, if like the Saudis come to someone else. She specifically just said, I would never work with people. Like we should learn not to work with people who would kill our friends and then worked with those people. So like that's, I love that. And so if people don't remember, Reginald did absolutely make a tweet where it said that before he let TSM get like CLG, by the way, not only, obviously people will know, a couple of years later, did TSM get as bad as CLG? In fact, CLG was better last year. But CLG even just sold, and in theory has left LCS. So what does Reggie do now? He promised he would sell his car, his house. He didn't. He just sold TSM, the LCS team, or is going to. And then he's not only leaving. This is where fans have lost their mind on Reddit. I've always told you Reddit is skewed by Fnatic fans in Europe and TSM fans in NA. And even when they criticize TSM, it'll never be as harsh as like Perk's accountability thread or like, you know, G2 Carlos is a scumbag. So the way you know is this, because the thread announcing, Reginald just saying to the fans basically like, by the way, I'm not only leaving. It's not even that I'm leaving League. It's not like I'm leaving because I don't have any money. I'm just going to go to China. By the way, already an insane 90s neocon boomer meme there. He sent American jobs to China. Guys, like, where's Bill O'Reilly? Get him out here. Can I get him and bring Patching in now? What's going on? So already that should already, you'd think, have all the, you'd think people would go mad on him. Dude, the level of cope from TSM fans, they were actually, all the top comments was like, well, you know, the team was sort of going downhill over the years and there's a lot of opportunities in China. You know, actually, it's a good market to it. Like, what are you talking about? What? So, no, don't worry, guys. We'll get to MSI, but we have to talk about this because we had a crusade against them and we won in every sense.
What I love about this, Thorin, is like, why would you even be a TSM fan continuing at this point? Because literally, guys, it's not the players. It's not Bjergsen anymore. It's not even them being in North America. It's literally just Reginald. And like Reginald is such an odious human being that you are, if you are still a TSM fan, just admitting that you are a Reginald fan. That's horrible. Like, why? Why would you do that? Also, the rumors are that they're going to the LPL, but we don't know how, in what capacity. They haven't, to my knowledge, sold their LCS slots yet. They're simply marketing it. Yep. They're shopping for buyers at the moment. And by the way, guys, the current value of an LCS slot is about $20 million. So that's kind of the agreed upon market price, which is obviously significantly lower than LEC slots were selling for at the end of last year. So that's why, you know, people have been kind of reluctant to speak publicly about it.
You might remember there was a rumor like a year or two ago that Reggie wanted to buy a new LEC, wasn't there? Wasn't that the rumor that they were going to go the other direction as well on that?
It wasn't a rumor. He was talking to Misfits. It's not a rumor. That's what was happening. Was that he was trying to at least suss out whether it would be good to go to LEC. And like what I love about the video that they made of Reginald slowly reading and awkwardly reading.
Oh, by the way, if people don't know what you're saying there, here's the little tip for you. Every time you see a camera cut, that can be a different take. I've worked with Reginald on interviews. He is so dumb, he can't even say like 3 sentences in a row. I'm not joking. Like there was a cut every few sentences, Monty, every few words, even that cut to another camera. And and the way he was speaking slowly, I'm with you, mate. He had big cards behind, like held. I could tell. You could just tell.
With like a pointer, like a laser pointer,
like
just
Path.
like under.
Well, he's not there anymore, but yeah,
underlining every word. But what was so funny was like this idea that he keeps going back to it, that it's always been his goal to win worlds, when he just like obviously was never going to happen to North America, and that was just bullshit to rile up his fans. But I think what's so crazy about this, Thorin, is that there's a couple very funny angles to this. Okay. One of them was actually, I won't say who pointed this out to me, but it was a funny point that a friend of mine brought up, which is that Reginald has actually become what Mark Merrill accused him of, which is that going into the summer split, they're going to be paying the LCS minimum salary, which I think is about $75,000 right now. And remember that teams get $2 to $3 billion in revenue share from Riot a year. So if you're paying $75,000 to 5 players, that's $375K plus some housing expenses plus some coaches. He is actually now doing the thing Mark Merrill accused him of, which is taking money from Riot and then using it in other games.
By the way, if people want to know how egregious it is that Reggie of all people in TSM would pay that sort of money, if people don't know, a year or two ago there were players making more than that in Academy.
Yeah.
There was people making like 100K in Academy sometimes. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So that's like the funny part number one. The funny part number two is that, to his point about wanting to sell everything to not end up like CLG. Now, we don't know what form, the new TSM is going to take. In fact, we don't even know if it will take form. Like, this could just be a sell and exit, and they may never find a deal. That's not cut and dried that they are going to find a new deal within a different league. But if they go to LPL, it could be a partnership arrangement for the branding, like we saw with Victory 5 and NIP this year.
Yeah.
So it's not maybe that they're buying a slot. It could be that they are giving money and the TSM name in order to have an equity split with a company that already owns a slot. Because we really haven't seen that many LPL slots like changing hands.
No.
They change names, but
I mean, they're owned by billionaires often, if people don't know, so they don't really need to sell. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think this could just be a brand partnership like we saw with NIP and V5, where they start sharing some of the costs, or Comcast and T1, for example. So between SKT and Comcast, they kind of collectively operate the T1 brand at this point in time. So I would anticipate it's going to be something more like that rather than an outright purchase of a slot. But what's so crazy is that he really just wants to spend more money. Like, he wants to burn money because his only goal, it doesn't matter how successful he is, there is some deep-seated need that instead of just going and running his very successful businesses, like his website network, the Blitz app, etc., he has to spend money to attempt to win a world championship. To what end? I have no idea. Like, if I was him, I would just sell my LCS slot and wash my hands of the entire thing and just fuck off and do other things with my life. Run my successful businesses that are profitable. I think what's so amazing is that, unlike a lot of the other teams and team owners, he actually has the majority of his business not be esports focused. And in this time where the esports bubble is popping, why would you want to stick around unless you absolutely had to and it was your core business? It's not his core business. But he's doubling down weirdly in this time because he apparently just needs to win worlds, which even in a top tier region like Korea or China could be very difficult.
I mean, there's also, by the way, a sort of tangential story that came out yesterday that is actually hilarious, technically this morning or whatever. It was actually so funny, Monty. You won't have seen this. So Clement on Facebook in Chinese told a story about where apparently, the whole Peter Zhang thing where he was the one who was the middleman between like the talents. If I've always told people this, including people like Bo, that's in Vitality, and he chose not to go with them. And it's inferred that essentially he recommended you to TSM if you were the one who sort of gave him more cut of like the money that he was going to come to your way. And it was a corrupt thing, hence why they got bomb players. There's a story that just came out that is so funny. So Clement Chu, big friend of the show, we had him on many years ago. Obviously he's done the LPL, comes from the LMS region, legendary figure within the scene, got a lot of us into like the Chinese scene. He told a story on Facebook in Chinese that said, this is mental, that Speaker says that Peter Zhang tricked them by showing clips of Knight and just basically like, I assume like the no nameplate on, and said that was the Kia duo guy.
Yeah, duo.
And that's why TSM signed him, because they baited him. So they were just watching, like, think about the most, if you don't know, if you've seen MSI, he's pretty fucking good, isn't he, Knight? Just godlike shit. And then that's who they thought they were signing. That's even better, dude, because that's like some Warner Brothers cartoon shit with like an Acme thing, and you put a logo over, like, no, this is the non-Roadrunner killing machine. Like, Reginald's actually a cartoon character there. What? That is mental. I love shit like that, though. I fucking love it. I love that shit. It's so stupid, isn't it?
The level of that scam is just hilarious.
Yes.
I mean, it's just
because it's like a fucking Christopher Nolan movie or something. The detail, the scam goes so many layers deep. Exactly.
I like how it just more and more keeps getting revealed by it. I look forward to Sword in a couple of years when Sword Art actually reveals what happened with the whole car saga. Wow, that's too good. Oh man, but yeah, I don't know where TSM is going with all of this stuff. I just don't understand their key motivations here beyond just a prideful need to do well in League of Legends, which doesn't have any kind of basis in economic reality at this point in time for an organization like TSM, especially when you move markets, because you're not going to be able to take any of your sponsors with you. I mean, do you even have a business arm in China that's going to be able to monetize? All of their operations have been based around selling North American sponsors, founding their sales agency, selling across their websites to an English-speaking audience. Like, it's just deeply weird.
Here's what only we can say, and no one else in League of Legends is allowed to address it. So, all the important things, like who's being malnourished, who's getting fucked, who's being screwed by Riot. So here's what I can say that other people can't. You've heard the stories, Monty, you know them. The stories with the Koreans as to why so many of the legendary Koreans that have been in the LCK but then went to the LPL don't come back, or they come back like 6 years later, is because the story goes that you can't just go there. It's like, you can't just go there, get the money and then just leave. They sort of like have ways and means of keeping the money in the country. That could be enormous tax if you tried to leave with it. That could be things like essentially just telling you straight up, like, you're not allowed to do that. So basically, that's why they tend to stay, put down roots, or like find different ways to spend the money. All I'll say is this: I don't even think Reginald's thought of that angle. Like, mate, let's imagine it went amazingly. You had the top team, you're winning worlds, got all the Chinese sponsors. How does that money ever get to you? Are you just going to have to go and live in China, mate? Like, they've thought these things through, I think, mate. He's thinking it's like America. You just roll up and do what you want. Like, you don't. There's a different world over there. There's different rules as well. And also, I've found this, like, when you come into someone else's territory and you're the outsider, you just get all the bad deals. There's a different price for you and a price for them. They know what they're doing. Like, one thing I'll give credit to China for, it's how they've been so economically successful, is they've intentionally incentivized money and business to stay inside the country. They don't want the whole like global approach to it unless it's them. They don't mind them expanding, but they don't want you coming in and taking out. It's the opposite mentality to the aforementioned boomer 90s take.
Yeah, I mean, look, we don't even know if it's for sure the LPL. At least I don't. They were sniffing around to LEC, so that's still a possibility as well. And honestly, like, there have been some.
I would love that just for the rivalry, so we can keep talking shit, and still get involved. Please be the LEC. I would love that.
So the other thing is that it could be LCK, honestly, because a lot of the lower tier teams in LCK have been, I would say, unhappy with the financial arrangements that they have with LCK, because what's been going on now is LCK actually has the highest average player salary of any league in the world, and they have the lowest amount of revenue split from any league. So a lot of those teams are...
sounds really attractive.
Sounds like a great place to lose money.
That sounds so stupid, doesn't it? Like, let me buy in, please. I must buy in. Like,
well, I mean, it tracks with the behavior that's going on right now. But I do think that some of the lower teams might actually want to sell within LCK. At this juncture. So who knows? Who knows where it's going? Like I said, as far as I'm aware, there hasn't been an actual deal done.
I know which one it should be.
By the way, I'm very curious why they would make this.
Didn't you see that fucking news where there's that company's bought into Frederick Brion and it's going to, for real, be called OK Bro, Reginald Bro? If Reggie buys in to fucking a team called Bro, I can't even handle that. Like, that would actually be incredible thematically. That would be the shit.
That would be funny. Yeah, I think, I don't know, man. It could definitely happen in LCK as well. I think what's so weird about this is that they don't have a confirmed buyer for their slot, which I would think that announcing that you are leaving prior to selling could, in fact, hurt your ability to sell because you've already committed to selling. So it seems like whoever wants your team, whoever is actually bidding, could now undercut potentially if you don't have that many offers, because they know you're in a position where you kind of have to sell based on your PR. So it's weird. It's a little weird the way they're doing things, and I'm curious why that is, because there has to be a reason. But
maybe they also want to get the word out there, trying to attract buyers. Because you know this behind the scenes. We did hint at this, but we can't say what's what. I mean, we're not doing a Richard Lewis report here, guys. Man, I heard there was other big teams as well. I've heard that want to sell either their slot or maybe the whole bloody org, because obviously the financial situation is just not great in America.
I've said this before on shows. Here are the teams. I said this before CLG sold. I said on Power Spike, CLG is for sale, and they've sold like a couple days later. Here are the teams that are for sale right now. Immortals, Dignitas are both for sale. I guess TSM has been shopping around as well. Those are the LCS teams that have been, I think, most aggressive in terms of trying to find buyers. But a lot of the teams, because of the revenue sharing, as I said right now, they can actually make money by just putting their players on LCS minimums.
And getting rid of Academy, all that shit.
Yeah, getting rid of Academy, which is something that's happening as well. So they're not going to take any offer. You know what I mean? It's not a fire sale. A lot of the teams that currently exist would take the right offer. Like, I think if there was somebody who walked up and offered them $20 million, they would take it, but they have to have that person coming in. So I think what's going to happen is a lot of those teams that are potentially looking to sell are going to renegotiate player contracts down, maybe not to absolute LCS minimum, but certainly to a break-even state within Riot's revenue sharing arrangement, which is fine. Like, and here's the thing, guys. Look, you know, we've been busy with MSI and the major. You know, we haven't had time to really dive into the North American Challenger thing and the Academy system, which is something that we are likely to do on the Four Horsemen later this week. So we're not going to get into it a lot here because that's a very complicated topic. But in general, I kind of approve of the elimination of the Academy system. It was enormously expensive. And at the end of the day, if teams are trying to break even based on the revenue sharing arrangement that Riot has made with them, it allows them to put more money, relatively speaking, into their LCS teams to keep, the players, relatively comfortable. The Academy systems are very expensive. And I think that the teams really need that money in order to continue to exist.
That's one of those things you'll see when we do the episode, but I think people will be shocked by my take, because you're all going to think, because you just don't know who I am. This is the thing about me. There's actually like tactics, like Machiavellian ideas that you should keep people off guard and not like let them figure out. People could never figure me. I try my hardest to explain myself and be specific with my language. They still misinterpret it. So they think, for example, Monty, I just irrationally hate Riot. Spoiler, I did the rant a few episodes ago. I completely rationally hate Riot. And in fact, if you don't, what the fuck's wrong with you? You either shut the fuck up because you don't know enough about Riot, or maybe go and dig up and find out about it, or just admit you like evil people and abusing women, because I can't see what else is going for you at this point in time. So what I would say instead is this: even though, it's funny to see Riot get wrecked, where they're like letting the league, essentially they're letting the owners tell half the league, fuck off, you're not a pro anymore. Similarly, you might think to bang on TSM and bang on all the other orgs I don't like, and Dignitas, I can just go in on them, because they got rid of the Academy squad. Look, I'll go in on them when they've lied and been disingenuous and said they want to develop talent. Yeah, but I'm with Monty on this one. In fact, when I looked into it, spoiler, I think essentially the ROI is nonsense on fucking having an Academy squad, because it's in California, the minimums, it costs so much money. Again, you guys don't get it. It costs like $700K, $600K to have an Academy squad. That's not with the housing. Oh, it's ridiculous. So if you know what it actually costs, and the whole point is you never had to pay for it until they had the rule outside of your LCS. There was no, people have, as far as I can tell, they've lied about that. There isn't like you had to put this much away. Like, I think it was up to the teams, basically. You could do the minimum in that case. So to me, it's like in the modern day, it's where fans have to really think what the fuck they're talking about. I get that companies all trick you that they care about you as a human, the customer. They care about humans in general. Companies, it's even what the word corporation means. Corpus. It's a dead entity that is granted live human rights as a being and operates, if it's public company, entirely for the sole purpose of enriching its shareholders. In fact, public companies have a fiduciary responsibility to do it for their shareholders. So that scenario, as Monty says, if it's just a massive overhead with very little upside, aside from essentially almost like virtue signaling and being like, hey, we care about them kids, That's the first thing you slash when the market goes to shit. When you're on the brink of selling, that's the first thing you cut. When you have to get money to pay real LCS players, that's the first thing you cut. So I'm actually not going to just bag on them because, like, oh, you've lied. Like, I'll go on that angle, but I actually agree with it. I don't think it makes sense. I think for a while it hasn't. And this is where fans are like, but you have to develop NA talent. You mean the same NA talent you don't support? You mean the same guy that if he gets replaced by Hans Sammer, you'd rather watch Hans Sammer play? Like, you guys don't incentivize the LCS either. No one watched Academy, for fuck's sake. The joke was, most people, Monty, and when I say this line, this nails it dead. Most people don't even know that the fucking Cowrie guy was on the academy team of EG and that Danny was never on the academy team. He came from the fucking amateur prodigies team or whatever it was. People don't even know that because they don't watch pro. In fact, all they do, as far as I can tell, is they want a retirement home for someone like Smoothie to go to for a year and then, or Licorice, and then come back a year later. Like, that's just that's your fucking luxury. I don't, like, even though I don't like Reggie, he doesn't have to pay for that. He just have to foot the bill. It's actually right. No, should have set up another league, mate. And incentivized it with revenue.
Also, I think that there's no way to cut it that the academy system, at least as a product, has been an entire failure. I mean, it has like 3,000 viewers. Compare that to the ERLs, guys, where those fucking Carmine Corp matches are doing like filling venues. And, you know, I think there's got to be a better way to do it. Sure. And the academy system hasn't generated a viewership base on its own. And frankly, as Thorin's pointing out, it hasn't even generated that many interesting pro players. Like, almost all of the pro players are either imports or, as Thorin notes, coming directly from, you know, they don't even spend that much time in academy, if any time in academy at all. So I do think that there's a chance here to do something interesting, potentially with collegiate, or to regionalize the Americas, which they've already implied they're going to be doing with Latin America and Brazil.
Yeah.
And who knows? Maybe those players, the plan is in the future that Latin American and Brazilian players don't count as imports in the same way that Oceanic players don't, which is something that I've been advocating for a long time. Or you just merge CB, LOL, and LCS into an Americas product, which is exactly what they've done in Valorant, by the way, for VCT Americas. These are much better ideas that I think would generate significantly more interest in viewership.
A common thing for a long, long time. There was no North America. It's Americas, and Brazil gets to play. As long as they moved to NA, they could play in EPL, etc. Right, should we do MSI then? Should we go on to the big topic? First of all, let's just do the crowing, shall we? You know when people do this thing, Monty, when you explain a format to them they haven't seen before, and they just always end on like, but what about this? You go, well, I've seen it before. That doesn't happen. No, but I don't think it would work because well, the thing is though, if there's a final and they didn't die, like you wouldn't care about the fight, right? I already know from the beginning of esports that Double Limb is the shit. Spoiler, all those years you argued against me, fans. Was I right or was I right? This fucking killed it. This tournament was already, I said it before, mate. This was the best tournament since IPL 5. That lower bracket angle, look, the joke is it wasn't even as hype as it could have been because of the BLG upsets. That was good in the short term, but actually we were sort of robbed of another either Gen.G versus T1, and then maybe like T1 versus JDG. Like, there's actually a world where next MSI could be even more fire. And that's without, by the way, a Western team doing a run. What if a G2 had actually been straight fire and got the meta read and made the semi-finals run? Like, mate, this format is going to be so good. You are going to cry when Worlds ends and you realize it's single layman's shitty Swiss system. Like, even what people don't like, that Mad Lions start in the bracket, that's great. I don't give a fuck about seeing them play Rainbow 7. That sounds like a meme post, mate. Like, I want to see them just play straight best of fives against the best teams in the world and sometimes regional opponents. So I thought this whole tournament was fucking fire, mate. It was a banger. It was great to watch this. I was even watching it. I had to like find time. I was like, you know, half time and like fucking Counter-Strike between the maps. I would like have to watch 20 minutes and go back on the YouTube VOD. That's right, Twitch. I watch on YouTube back and scroll back. So I thought it was an amazing tournament. It was one of the best I've seen in years.
Yeah, it was really fun, and we basically got to see all of the matchups that we wanted to see outside of Gen.G versus JDG.
That's the only one.
Yeah, kind of a bummer, but Gen.G also, you know, basically sputtered out against BLG in some pretty embarrassing games, and I think it was
Chovy, you came and you betrayed me again now, and I'll still love you in LCK now. Fucking hell, this guy you know the I love is this. Here's the angle you might not have noticed, Monty. Is Dom got broken twice and then immediately got ruined by the universe for being broken. So as we mentioned on the last episode, you remember we said that the most interesting thing about the bracket, Monty, was I had J.D.G winning, you had Gen.G, and Dom, believe it or not, Dom had T1. Dom, the ultimate hater of T1, downplay, right? As soon as he picked T1, they lost to J.D.G and BLG, and he was done, right? But the best part is he did it again to himself, Monty, because he also then said that Chovy's the best player in the world. He broke finally, and then Chovy shit the bed against BLG.
I don't know how much of it was Chovy.
I can't.
I don't know how much.
It's a bit like the Worlds one, Monty. Yeah, he wasn't shit, but he's supposed to be the best player in the world, like Dom said. He's supposed to style on people like you go, mate. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, look, the Gen.G thing was obviously very disappointing to me because it felt like another. Well, I mean, it's not that they played a particularly great series against T1, to be fair. I just thought that they would bounce back like they did in the lower bracket in the LCK because they showed very rapid adaptation in the LCK playoffs that we really didn't see here. And we didn't get any of the big Thorin performances that pushed them over the top in the finals.
Another classic underperformer.
Well, we have to admit that was an overperformance in the finals. By the way, I don't know where these narratives come from on the broadcast, but people talking about the casters talking about his like legendary Gragas.
Oh, it's mad, isn't it?
Yes, he had good Gragas games in the finals. Did you watch the season? Do you know his champion pool? Because it's not that Thorin really has been a massive Gragas player this year. Outside of the finals, let me just look. I think he had 2 games on it in the spring split.
They just did it because if you go to Leaguepedia and put overall, it's one of his best win rates. But as you said, that's from years ago.
Yeah, he has 21 games on it in total. And yes, he has a 76% win rate, but it's not like it's in his top 5 champions. And because he's been on good teams for a variety
Even last year, he
career,
played it like 6 times, Monty. Like it's just from years ago they're going off. They're actually going off some old meme shit.
Yeah, but when they're like trying to pump up his Gragas, all you have to say is, this is what I don't understand about, if you don't know, here's the thing. If you don't know that he hasn't been playing a lot of Gragas this year, outside of the finals, where he did have an extraordinary performance, as a caster, here's all you have to say. He had a great performance on Gragas in the finals. Maybe he's going to continue that. You don't have to like pump him up as a legendary Gragas player. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense at all. So, as for win rates, when you are on a team that constantly wins, as Thorin has been for the majority of his career, you're going to have good win rates. His win rate as a professional player is over 60%. His win rate on his number 1 played champion, Gnar, is 68%. He's a Gnar player. Like, that's who he is, guys. And Jace is his number 2. Like, he actually has played a lot of carries in the top lane as well. Like, we can talk about his Akali or his Camille, which he's played less than his Gragas, but that has been more recently relevant in the scope of his career, especially last year. So I don't know where some of this stuff comes from, but there's just different ways to phrase it on the broadcast if you are not sure about a player's career or their legacy. You know? So anyway, this is all to say that when we look at Gen.G and their disappointments within this bracket stage, especially versus Billy, I mean, I like the fact that they switched it up to playing Annie, because Annie was, well, first off, very frequently banned. When it came time for LCK Spring, we saw Chovy. Let me see here. He played 2 games on Annie in the regular season and 0 games in the playoffs. So this isn't a pick that we've really identified as being a Chovy pick, but it functions like a Chovy pick in that it gets a lot of mid lane priority and allows him to roam. You kind of dump Tibbers into the mid lane on cooldown, and you're able to really effectively play around objectives. What was weird about this series was not the Annie. Well, it was his teleport in game number 3 that was just completely egregious at the end of the game. But I mean, I woke up. All right, here's the story. I woke up because the game started at 4 a.m. my time, so I wake up and it's like 6:30 or 7, and I pull out my phone and I open my phone to the live game and it's game 3, and I see them down 0-2 and Peanut playing Kindred, and my first thought is, this is fucking over. Like, how did we get to this point where Peanut spends this tournament playing Nidalee and Kindred, which may have been his identity 4 years ago, 5 years ago, but it's certainly not his identity now.
The other thing that killed me was this, and if you're a lifelong Chovy fan, you know what I'm talking about now. Another thing Chovy does, and there was the famous Season 9 Griffin one, is when he is like the best player in the world, he will do like what Caps does now and just play the supportive champion, right? That works if you have like... The reason T1 does it is because, one, Faker just isn't that carry player. And then two, Zeus and Gumayushi are supposed to carry on their picks. In this team, Monty, I can't have fucking, like, Maokai top lane on Doran, which means then we got Annie mid, right? Spoiler, now it's all on Piers, the rookie. And what's the one thing BLG has for them? They have, like, fluky top lane who just feast on famine, Bin, and then they have all in on Elk. Like, the Elk is being treated like the next fucking Uzi Eye. Like, every game is raised the puppy. Every team fight is everyone jump onto Elk. Like, the joke is, like, in that scenario, Pierce is a rookie still, guys. Like, yeah, he's actually not this. There's very few rookies can actually hold up under international pressure like this and be the best. So to me, it's an example of where you've drafted like Korean style. Like, you did the correct draft, but not for your personnel. Like, I'm not putting all my eggs in the Pierce basket on that one, you know. Also, he's on Aphelios. It's not exactly like the easiest champion in the world to fucking 1v9 a game if you're behind from it. Like, there's a lot of fucking... Remember, the thing people never understand about the Aphelios thing is, it's like one of those champions a bit like, nah, you don't choose when it's powerful. You don't choose when you have that gun. Like, you try and empty the guns and get to the ones you want at the right time, but then if it's, you're on the wrong set of guns, like, you can't do the... People... There's too many noobs have just seen the fucking ult, and 4 years ago, Idiot Riot, like, haha, 200 years. Like, they think it's just you press a button. It's not fucking Annie or Syndra or something, you know? Like, there's so much complexity. So the problem with that one is, it's also the fact they got 3-0'd, mate. At least it was competitive, I'd be in there. But you just get clapped 3-0 by a team that, like, BLG wasn't even supposed to be at MSI. They weren't even supposed to be here.
I also think that one of the meta developments that we saw by the time we got to the finals was that Jinx just has to be banned, especially in the hands of some of these players. But Jinx's ability to clean up these team fights and get passive resets was actually a huge part of why these teams did so well. So, for example, in game number 2, between Gen.G and Billy, this is a very winnable game for Gen.G. And what was a common thread between Gen.G and T1 when they were playing against BLG was that, first off, I mean, this is just worse team fighting. There's not really another way to put it, is that they would over-engage and then they would get kited by a Jinx. The Jinx would kill one of them and then reset all over their entire team. Like, so what happens in Gen.G versus BLG is that Peanut is standing on a ward in a brush on the left side of mid lane, and he W's over the wall. So they know he doesn't actually have W at that point in time, the clone, the Wukong clone. And then he E's to engage, but Elk has summoners up. And so Elk just kites him because he knows he's coming and that he's out of movement abilities. And Peanut dies, gives the reset over, and then BLG ends the game off of that team fight. But this was a pretty advantageous position in the game for Gen.G, but they played it badly, and they played badly around Vision. They played badly around the engage, and the Jinx is just supremely powerful. And that's why by the time we get to the finals, the one game where Jinx gets through, Jinx wins the game for BLG. Otherwise, it's just kind of banned. BLG spends the entire time banning it outside of that, because it's such a supremely powerful pick. And as you say about Aphelios, you have to have the right conditions for Aphelios to be good, and he doesn't have that same kind of like janitor quality of cleaning up fights like a Jinx or a Zeri does. And Zeri is, I would say, more limited at this point in time, due to the nerfs that have happened. Still obviously quite strong as kind of a secondary pick, but that's why we are seeing this kind of rise of Jinx in terms of, you know, the where she was at this tournament, right?
I'm going to take also on Gen.G's style. I want to get your thoughts on. Like, it goes like this, because it was the same reason why I was so sure if T1 made it to the final, they wouldn't be able to beat JDG again. It's because here's the problem. T1 has that really interesting style where they can choose when not to fight, when to engage, and when to move around the map or take a fight over here. Gen.G is the one that can use the waves against you and can choose, again, like, you want to go for this, we're just going to take the waves and we're going to take a tower, right? That's all great in LCK, where teams play honorably and they do what you're supposed to do. Yes, after you, sir. Oh, thank you very much. No, after you. Oh, and to you, sir. Oh, a good top of the morning to you, sir. Like, that's great. But what you found here was, it's like when they were trying to tell me when I did a Big Brains episode, they were telling me, yeah, but the thing is, like, T1 will basically get like JDG in scenarios where they shouldn't fight and they'll fight. And it's like, you don't know these teams, bro. If you know, JDG is the best at team fighting, but BLG, all they have is team fighting. So what you need to know is this. When you as Gen.G or something go, well, I guess you could team fight us now, but why would you? It would be silly. You're behind. This isn't a lot. They're like, do you feel in control right now? Like, their whole world is doing those fights from 40-60. Their whole shit is literally like, right, it's literally all the eggs in the elk basket, and let's just go. And then obviously that's where actually the Bin guy, I'm just going to say it now, you're all going to get so hurt in your feelings. Bin is overrated. Because he really is like some PDD motherfucker where he either carries the fuck out the game or just shits the bed in lane and feeds over and over and over again. Now, here's why that's brilliant in this team, though. Because in this team, when you're all just looking at elk like this, the fucking Jax is just on your head, and then the fucking guys coming into the Cassandra like that. Like, the distraction element works in this team. So I feel like for Gen.G and T1, dude, they really, I bet they went into it thinking there's no way the series plays out like this. And as you're saying, they didn't even have to take some of these fights. But I'll tell you what, the LPL is amazing. It's like that, because Koreans play like percentage-based League of Legends. They play like poker players who are trying to win in the long run. They're being offered, like, well, listen, I know you're not a team that normally takes a team fight in this scenario, but would you care for a 60-40 team fight in your favor? And then they're like, well, we have to take that. And then the joke is like, that's what the fucking BLG wants. They don't give a fuck, man. They want to get dirty and fight. They want chaos.
Well, yeah, it's also that both Gen.G and T1 didn't play like Gen.G or T1 in their last couple of series. Like, Gen.G was literally taking dragon fights where they were behind on objective power spikes that they didn't need to take. Sometimes they had already taken an earlier dragon against BLG, and then it would be BLG's first dragon. They're behind, like, Elk has already hit a power spike on his item, Pays hasn't. And a normal Gen.G game, they would cross map. In these games, they get sucked into the fights for I have no idea what reason. Like, there must be, there isn't an explanation behind this besides Gen.G and T1 have nerves issues on certain players. And for Gen.G, it happened at Worlds last year where they didn't play like they should. And it happened again at MSI this year. Weirdly, it doesn't seem to happen in LCK playoffs. They play like they should in LCK playoffs, and they seem very prepared. On the other side, T1, if there's any kind of stakes, they have crumbled. They have just crumbled. Basically, we saw them crumble at Worlds. We saw them crumble here. You would have thought, by the way, that the best team in the world at diving bot lane would maybe play around bot lane, especially when they know that the biggest win condition is Elk and you have Zeus in the top side. Instead, they basically allowed BLG to repeatedly dive them bot lane and set up unfavorable matchups for themselves and tried to prioritize top. But the thing is that when T1 got top ahead, like, they got Kennen massively ahead in game number 2 of that series versus BLG. And did they, like, it feels like Zeus cannot convert those leads in big games.
He's too underwhelming when it's the big match, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah, and so you spend all this time getting him ahead and like kind of stuffing the Scion thing, and then he just runs it down under a tower and gives up a solo kill to Bin, and they lose the advantage they have. He doesn't set up big flanks on the Kennen. He's not effective at all. He takes a massive lead and ends the game 0-4-2, doing virtually nothing on this Kennen. And I think it's just so difficult to deal with T1 in these situations, because the other person who hasn't been showing up for a lot of the big games is Faker. Like, I understand why, you look at the team composition, and we saw this play out between JDG and BLG in the finals, which is the Jace versus Sylas composition. So the Sylas, we saw this starting at Worlds last year. The Maokai is taken first. Then you take Sylas in the mid lanes, you get the better version of the Maokai ult. But there's a punish there, which is that you have to play against Jace in lane. Jace is very good into Sylas in lane. Faker dies in that lane. Like, compare that to the Sylas versus Jace matchup we saw between Yagao and Knight, where Knight just slams Yagao on the Sylas. And that's the price that you expect to pay when you are taking the Maokai ult. You say, okay, so which is why they don't ban the Sylas in the second rotation of your T1. You're feeling very good about your team composition, right? You have massive AoE, you have a huge front line, you've got some good poke damage, but they squander all of their advantages, and that's it. You just don't win in the late game in that scenario. So it was really sad, because it wasn't necessarily, part of it was that the Korean teams, I think, had bad ideas a lot of the time. Like, in the, you know, when we're looking at some of the like J or T1 Kindred games, sometimes their team compositions don't make sense. Owner plays Kindred, and they're playing Kindred into like Gragas. Like, that's really hard to do because you're going to get knocked out of the ultimate. It's tough to be in those kind of situations and make it work.
I even thought, if you looked, like, it's like you were saying before, the Koreans had a totally different read on the meta, Monty. Like, the joke is they all gave BLG the fucking 1 million Jinx and Zerries. And BLG clearly wanted those. They actually like those picks. Meanwhile, all the Koreans opted into, like, we just want the Xayah and the Aphelios. Can we please have Xayah and Aphelios? No. Like, that didn't work for you. That did not. Also, you don't have ruler, mate. Like, none of your teams have ruler. There's another thing right now. First of all, on the Faker thing, here's the way you have to phrase it. Because I said this before, it hasn't popped through people's heads yet. This is how you know, Monty. People really do actually not give a fuck whether you import players. Because, you know, we always used to get triggered that they'd say, like, IG proved that the LPL is better than the LCK. It's like, by taking two of the greatest players you could ever get from Korea and stomping everyone. What? But they do. In their brain, they treat you like you're Chinese. People, the penny still hasn't dropped for people. The best player in the world and the MVP of this tournament, outside of ADC, is a Chinese mid laner. A Chinese mid laner, guys. He's better than Trophy. He is better than Faker. He's better than Lucky. In fact, look at this tournament. Not only is that insane, I don't think the world's best mid laner has ever been more gapping a Faker ever. But think of the level, like you said, of the champions. Think about his Annie versus Faker's Annie. His Ari versus Faker's Ari. His fucking Jace versus Faker's Jace. It's night and day. I mean, that's a fucking pun, but it's ridiculous. It's actually ridiculous. The joke is, we're talking about Western gap. The gap in mid lane for T1 and Knight is absolutely bonkers. You saw when Yagao got to the final, if you thought, oh, he's having a good tournament, fucking Knight just dusted him off, mate. Like, yeah, cheers, mate. I'll take that. I'll beat you on the other side of it too. Get the fuck out. And then also, I'm going to say it now, a lot of people have to have accountability here. The problem with Gumayushi is this. Because of his mechanics, people are just riding the fucking high. It's a bit like Bin in that sense. People ride the peak, and they look at the peak and they go like this, Monty. But if he can keep at that level, he's as good as Ruler. But he doesn't, though. Ruler does that day in and day out, mate. Gumayushi, he always has at least one game in a big series like this where he just lets you down. He just doesn't carry the fight you want him to. He has a fuck up in lane. Something goes wrong. It was just so disappointing to me. Like, T1 just never turned up in this series. They should have been in this final, especially when Gen.G got bounced. You just watched the Gen.G series. Like, how you can learn from that and beat them? Like, you also just get fucking donked. That was just sad, mate. It's just sad.
It's just so puzzling. It's just so puzzling because the Zeus that we know that can convert leads, lane leads into game wins.
Oh, by the way, fans are going to think Bin is better than fucking Zeus now. That's the world you now live in, Monty. But welcome to hell. Same as when I was telling people for years they have to bet the news eye. What do you mean? What about their worlds? Like, that's done. That ship's sailed. It's off on that one. Sound. He beat Thorin's legendary Gragas. With the blood pumping through Gragas's veins and the barrel with all the intoxicating, fucking sweet nectar of the. I can't.
The whole thing is like really wild because Zeus is just such an insanely consistent performer when it comes to domestic play. Again, outside of finals, he's just unfortunately like all of his worst performances have come on the global stage. And clearly there are some nerves issues with this T1 team. Something breaks down when they're on these big stages where they can't actually turn the potential we know they have. And this is the whole thing, guys. There is no question that in a different meta, earlier this spring, T1 was the best team in the world. That is not controversial. When they're playing the double AD carries bot lane, this team was phenomenally good. Like, the eye test on that version of the team and that meta was among, I would say, the highest performing eye tests of any team in the world in the history of League of Legends. That's how good they were. But when the meta shifted up, I think Gumayusi's inability to play Zeri at an international level did hurt this team on this patch. Like, that does make things more challenging than it needs to be. And I think that some of the underperformances of players like Faker and Zeus were really problematic. And Keria also seems to have a mental breakdown in some of these matches from what I've seen. So they are performing under their level that we have come to expect from them. And I don't know why that is. I don't think that you need to get rid of any of the members of this team because the highs are so good. It really is a mental block. And as for T1 fans who are calling for players' heads, these are all really young players outside of Faker. Are you really just going to throw Zeus away? He's 19 years old.
He's only played a year and a half, basically, at the pro level.
Yeah. Yeah. And remember that he was basically benched.
Yeah.
He started and then was benched for Kana, and he's played exactly a year and a half as a starter. That's how much he's played. And he has had absolutely wonderful performances throughout a lot of that, but he does choke. And
by the way, guys, that would be like kicking fucking caps after his first year because he had some int games. Like, you can do it, but you look like a fool in the future.
Think about how many all-time great athletes in sports start as dirty inters. Sure. The equivalent, like quarterbacks who just throw a billion interceptions. Like Peyton Manning famously had very bad early seasons.
He set the record for rookie picks.
Yes. Yeah. He set the record for interceptions. Sometimes that's just required because people have to test their limits and learn how to play at the professional level. And we've already seen such insane greatness from Zeus that it's not really necessary. Like, there has to be another solution. Look, for all we know, he could choke until the end of time. Maybe that's just who he is. However, I find that unlikely. Because the more exposure he's going to have to all of these big matches, in theory, the less the nerfs should matter. What T1 needs to do is actually get to the root of these problems, though, because I don't think they're going to solve themselves at the end of the day. Like, this
my first look would be some sort of maybe coaching change. That's the only thing I'd consider, mate.
Yeah, performance coaches, something is happening within this team, and I think you need to really analyze what's going on in comms and what's going on in the team environment, because it feels like that's really the killer for T1.
Also, here's the other question. I always hate when people do this, Monty. If you make a top 10 list and people go, what about this guy? And they never say who they're taking out. You have to do the other version of that. If you're going to tell me you're replacing Zeus, who are you replacing him with? If you say Keen, have you ever seen when Keen went international in season 8? It wasn't good. So I can't guarantee he's going to carry a world final. Mega player, mega talented.
I would trade.
Who are we going for?
Who are we for Keen? I would get some Keen on the Gen.G if I could.
I mean, here's another one. Same for ADC, right? Who are we getting at ADC? Deft? Deft isn't that sick domestically. He's just he's still a top player. He's not like a one-man carry, by the way. Debatable. It's maybe slightly better because of experience. By the way, no one knows how many more years he has. If not Deft, who else are we getting? Remember, Ruler's off in China. Like, Viper. You're going to say Viper, right? If you bring in Viper, I don't even know if you play the T1 style. Maybe if you bring Viper and you have to put all the eggs in the Viper, but maybe it has to be an Uzi. I think. Who the fuck knows? There's always behind the scenes stuff that makes these more complicated. The thing is, Korea isn't like LEC and LCS where you can just chop and change, make super teams. Like, usually super teams only happen when everything aligns. Like someone's contract ended with this org, or they win the LPL, so it's okay for them to join the rival org now. You don't in Korea just hop from one team to the other that much. Like, if you're wondering, how did Def go to Damwon? Because DRX was, the joke was, that was, if anything, his down year he had to play on DRX. Like, that wasn't a top org, and we all knew they were losing the team anyway at the end. So I think people are also misunderstanding. It's not that easy to just get better players than Gumayusi and Zeus. They have flaws, but who are we getting that's better? Especially the idea that they have to be guaranteed better. Because as you said, Monty, the youth element, if you are T1, you are absolutely thinking this way. Every year, Faker might retire. And if Faker retires, I don't want to have to build like 2 or 3 new carry positions. Yeah. I want those set, and then I'm just going to bring in the next stud mid laner. And that's the dream for them, is just slot Faker out one day and put in like a Chovy or never the next Chovy, as it were.
Yeah, or I mean, alternatively, you don't, because of the role that Faker plays within the team, you don't necessarily have to have the stud mid laner. You can actually have a rookie mid laner potentially if the other players are confident in carrying. That's the whole purpose of this team and the way that it is built. It isn't built around Faker carrying. That's not the purpose of what the roster does. Faker is an enabler for the side lanes. And so the problem is that when you hit the international stage and apparently Zeus is no longer capable of carrying, and you forget that your entire style has been based around getting bot lane ahead in a get the bot lane ahead meta. Like, it's just the decisions that were made were just so deeply confusing. It's the same shit with Gen.G. They fought fights they would never fight in LCK ever. Like, why are you opting into these engages? You don't have to do it. Your whole identity is making the smarter macro decision, but you're getting sucked into these fights for no reason. And you are also throwing your leads. And the exact same thing that I talked about on the Wukong from Gen.G from Peanut happened in the fourth game versus BLG. It was another really bad Wukong engage, this time from Owner, and they threw the game. And there's, for whatever reason, when there is a winnable game state for T1 or Gen.G in these two series versus BLG, they feel like they have to overextend. They feel like they have to push this advantage. And what happened is Owner did a useless turret dive on the Wukong, ended up feeding the Zeri, and they just push and win the game. Right? Like, it's not really excusable. These things just couldn't be happening. But the team fighting is better. And look, I'm not saying that this was like a throw from the Korean teams. I mean, it was to a certain degree, but also just this goes to highlight the superior team fighting that we see from a lot of the Chinese teams. Like, they just have a better idea about when to fight and when to press their advantages.
Here's the one reason I'm happy that T1 lose. I'm not, by the way, for the rest of the team. Zeus is now going to be treated like a fucking bomb, like he never did any of that domestically. Meanwhile, Bin gets the opposite. He gets to be a god because he did it internationally. Then Gumayushi is going to forever be in the shadow of A, his big brother, and B, all the other people like Ruler, like Viper, like the stud ADCs. Obviously, Carrier, if the rest of the team goes to shit, can't carry the game. He's the fucking support player. And Owner, quite frankly, isn't even the worst one in all these tournaments. He stands on like one bad pick or one bad game, but he just gets left to shit. And then Faker gets hyped by the casters and never can carry the series. So everyone wants T1 to fail, seemingly. I don't. I think it'd be so many sick storylines if they finally won Worlds or something. I think it'd be so sick for Korea. There's so many cool angles to it. The fact that Faker changed his style and his career, everything. But the one thing that reminds me when I start to get sad about what happened to T1 is I see Joe Marsh's face and I go, you're the Reggie of LCK, because you took over domestically. You've had all those championships. You've never won a single fucking banana cup internationally, mate. You've won nout. You've won absolutely sweet fuck all while bragging to the West and sort of trying to like be like the Peter of like Jack and fucking Steve. Like, now, guys, Carlos, listen up, mate. You've only won MSI. Like, here's what I would do as like the, the T1. I like invented Boxer and T1 basically. So this is how you win international. You've never done anything. By the way, there's already why Reggie should watch what he fucking wishes for, because this guy bought the greatest org ever in Korea that ever wants to play for, and he can't win Worlds, mate. You're gonna rock up to LPL, partner with like fucking that like Ultimate Prime or whatever, and try and win Worlds. I don't think so. But anyway, just seeing Joe Marsh's smug face just do that moment from that old school Simpsons episode where like Lisa didn't take the Valentine from Ralph, whatever his name is, and it's like, and Bart gets that video like, look, I've paused it. This is the frame. You can see where his heart breaks. Like, it's like seeing that every time. And even LS, who can't help like a moth to a flame, but buy into the Joe Marsh hype. Because I don't know, he gave him a fucking shoulder pat and was like, wipe your tears. They're just saying mean words on Discord one time. Here's money, take money, Dad, fix it, money. So when he does that, I just love that he rocks up. He's always there. It's like, I'm ready for the championship, boys. Because he's wanting that moment, mate, where when they win, he's going to run out with Faker and be like, with the trophy. He's never had it. And just seeing that moment where his face just drops, like, what have I done? And even better, knowing that because he's a foreigner, all those Koreans, even the ones that fuck with him, English, the ones that say they like him and support him, and they send him an English message like, go, Joe, T1 win. Knowing that they're all just at home like, Silva, Joe Marsh, Silva, I fucking love, I love it. It's delicious Schadenfreude. Please. No. know, it's like foie gras. I shouldn't have more. The way it's made is wrong, but it's too delicious.
I think. I think Joe. I've said this before. I think Joe Marsh's heart is in the right place. I just think he's very annoying.
I've said it a million times. Joe Marsh. You know what? I hope someone fucking drains the swamp there in the LCK. There you go. Whatever. That's the joke. That's the joke. That's the joke. Also, I'll just say this. Guys, this is where I love when the meta just goes to shit that only the Asian players can play. Because just like back in Season 8 and Season 9, where if Rookie had that fucking mid lane Jace, he was an absolute demon. Bro, they still can't even play the top lane fucking Jace. Like, people think Chasey's like some fucking unicorn because he plays the Jace. Mate, Knight's Jace is just on another level. Like, if people didn't see in that final, in the 3 games they won, he had 1 death total. You try doing that on Jace. By the way, I saw Broken Blade walking around fights on Jace, just going like, shall I go? No, I won't go in. No, oh shit, they're coming my way. It's like backing out. Like, Knight's ability. Also, the other thing when you watch someone like Knight as well, mate, is I hate to say this because I have so many friends that are top laners, but the mid laners, because their role is more about skill, they are more skilled than you, though, guys. And here's why. You might have better lane understanding of waves. I'll give you that. But the reason why mid laners are more skilled, Monty, is because when you see a Knight Jace, bro, his like timing on when to go between like the fucking whatever, the fucking gun form, the hammer form into the other one. Oh, it's unbelievable, mate. The fucking comboing's just mental. Every time they land it, it's ridiculous. It's like it makes them look like it's like twice as overpowered as someone else's pick. Like, why is this the same pick? Like, looks like you can never get onto him as well. You're supposed to just be right on top of his head. You can't get to him. He's just killing every fight. Oh, it's mental, mate.
I thought it was just, I mean, I think it's just a really good pick in general. And, you know, it gives you you have a lot of safety in the shorter, you know, mid lane than you do in top lane. I thought it was really well used by JDG overall, because they were drafting it with some pretty strong frontline picks. Like they were drafting it with Sion Sejuani or Sion Maokai, right? And giving them this opportunity to provide the pick and then clean up the fight with the AD carry. And they were just very good at playing the front to back, very aggressive team fighting style. I thought the Nautilus jungle that they pulled out was very interesting. By the way, I just went back and looked, guys. The owner throw was in game 1, not game 4 of BLG versus T1, the one I was thinking of. But that was a very winnable game for T1. They had Baron buff through the game and then instantly lost. I mean, this series could have started out 1-0 for T1, and with that confidence boost, like who knows what would have happened. But back to the Jace conversation, like I think the Nautilus swap was really interesting into the jungle, and if we're to believe it, Kanavi said that he had never played Nautilus jungle before, and that's another thing, Thorin. I honestly think that the confidence that the Chinese teams have, while the Korean teams play scared, these guys are like, fuck it, game 1 of a grand final, play Nautilus jungle first time ever. It's not
even though I hated it when they drafted the Vayne. What are the balls on these motherfuckers?
It was terrible.
I mean, listen, by the way, go watch the cast of that, Monty. You'll lose your mind. They're talking the whole way through the draft. LS was saying this. Like, they're talking about, like, you know, when it gets going, it's like, how's he ever going to kill anyone if those fucking,
here's the
you're going to get dived on, wrecked, and you didn't get ahead early, so you're fucked. But the balls to pick it, though, at the same time.
So the composition that BLG runs with Kennen, Kha'Zix, Annie, Vayne, and Lulu.
Where's the peel there, by the way?
Yeah. First off, sure. There's a bunch of squishies, right? There's a bunch of squishies. So you basically this team composition only works if you are skirmishing around objectives, right? Or trying to get picks. That's the only way it works. There is no wave clear. If you start losing this game and there's a siege, how the fuck do you clear a wave? Who clears the wave? You just lose. There's no scenario where you're A-ramming in mid lane where you can clear the wave or not lose your objectives. If you give up Baron, the game is over. And also, how do you even get to the point where you skirmish? Because Elk is just going to be mega shoved under his turret, and there's never going to be an opportunity to skirmish. You know what I mean? Like, this composition was bad and deeply confusing, and I think it was kind of a little bit of desperation, honestly. But I do appreciate the balls in this situation to go for something like the Vayne. As you say, like the Korean teams wouldn't do that, even though it's a bad composition. You know, the problem, I think a lot of what Gen.G and T1 were facing again was nerves. They were making weird decisions. and they weren't like they lack the kind of killer instincts. Like they play scared a lot of the time, or they make mistakes in high pressure situations. Whereas BLG and JDG, to their credit, continue to try and push their advantages and play aggressively at all times.
I also just love the fact that it's still a thing to this day. When someone like T1 or Gen.G gets in a fight and they think they're losing it, they're like, turn, guys, every man for himself, run for the hills. And you still lose like 2 people on the way out. BLG and JDG are just on some Rorschach shit like, I'm not trapped in here with you. You're trapped in here with me. They re-engage on the motherfucker. It's so sick, though. I love it. I fucking love it. And by the way, I told people another reason why I could not pick against JDG. It's because this lineup has never lost the best of 5. Including LPL playoffs, they've now played 7 best of 5s. The only team that sucked was Golden Guardians. That's it. Otherwise, they played BLG 4 times, T1, and they've played against EDG. In those 7 best of 5s that they've all won, they only lost 6 total games. They are 21-6 in best of 5 games. Like, because I actually think I was saying this before. Look, maybe if we went into some weird meta Monty where like team fight can't end the game and you end the base, like it's not all about dragon fighting. It's maybe in that world they won't be the best. Maybe like macro or kings can outback, but it doesn't matter in this meta. I think for real, that is one of the craziest lineups on paper to actually work in the server I have ever seen. Like the joke is when you look at the meta for 369 Knight and Ruler, like my God. what can't it's the dream. Like again, if you're a ruler, your mid lane is a monster as well, and you've got like one of the best tanks coming in always. It's amazing. Like it's so well put together, this squad. I've mentioned it before. I despise for reasons I'll talk about one day, but I can't fucking fault him as a coach though. What a fucking sick team this is.
Also, I think this is another narrative rewrite that has annoyed me about this tournament, this time by the fans, talking about Kanavi like he has been the best jungler in the world this year. Did you watch LPL? Like, JJ and Tarzan were both better than Kanavi during the regular season. That's not a controversial opinion, by the way. Kanavi, at times, was the reason why JDG was losing games. Now, he was great in this tournament, don't get me wrong, but that should be the narrative. It's like, wow, Kanavi was super good at MSI. But that it's not like he has even been the best domestic jungler in China for the spring split. But he turned it on when he needed to turn it on. His champion pool was really excellent. And again, playing the Nautilus and the jungle, very interesting. But it's also, JDG has very good macro, honestly. One thing that really impressed me was it's not BLG, like you were saying earlier, will take fights that perhaps they shouldn't. JDG will take the fight, but you'll notice that they will often force the fights to be taken on their terms. So, for example, in game 1, remember that Kanavi is not a player who apparently has ever played Nautilus jungle before. When they're fighting at Herald in game number 1, they want to fight, they want to get the Herald, but they don't take the fight immediately. They actually delay the fight, give Kanavi time to recall. Now, what does that recall do? Kanavi is able to purchase the Even Shroud at that point in time, which then adds a damage amp to the team fight that actually happens. But the team is communicating, and they actually form a plan to delay this fight for an item power spike that then allows them, I'm not saying that they wouldn't have won anyway, because they think they probably would, but you see how they're thinking, where they are able to really plan around certain item spikes, certain macro movements, and take the maximum amount of advantage that they can out of a situation and make sure they're going to win. It was a really great moment for JDG. And it just goes to show that this isn't a team that is taking fights willy-nilly. They are being very, very deliberate about how they handle certain things.
Also, mate, this is where you've got to go and watch some of these games with the broadcast on. Don't worry, I've accepted it now. I admitted it on the other episode. I'm hate watching now. I don't normally do it. In fact, I actually normally think fans are very childish, because the difference is they'll send a message to me and you trying to hurt our feelings. I'm not sending a message directly to Azael or the fucking broadcast. I'm referring to it on my channels and my platform. But I used to just watch Dom or LS and just like, just mute it and have something else going on, have it on the second monitor. Dude, I have to watch now, Monty, to see, like you say, all the whack shit that they say that shows they don't know what the teams are like. They were saying, can you even believe this? They were daring on this fucking broadcast to suggest that like JDG's like doesn't have the best macro or whatever. I can't remember if it was Azael or Kobe who said it. Like, it was one of those takes where, again, it's like, If there's anyone better, there's what, like 2 teams in the whole world have got better macro. What? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, again, they never lose, for fuck's sake. They don't lose. The 3-0 people, 3-1 people. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, because all I'm going to say is this. Keep that fucking energy when you're trying to tell me what geniuses G2 are, or how fucking, like, Cloud9 can do something on the map. Keep that energy. Explain their macro to me then, Kobe and Azael. What's C9's macro like compared to that? By your logic, absolute dog taste shit. Basically, if this was fucking the Blade Runner movie, they're the guy selling fucking frozen eyeballs on the bottom layer, and fucking JDG's not at the top penthouse, but they're near at the top of those fucking skyscrapers, aren't they? Coming in with all the Vangellas. That's fucking JDG, homie. You're just down there with that guy. What's going on? That fucking legendary actor that's all in all those 80s movies playing all the whack-ass characters, like always like a drunk character, whatever. You know who I'm fucking talking about. Boomers don't know. They probably think we're talking about 2049. Not your. I'm talking about your dad's Blade Runner, motherfucker, and not the theatrical cut. Anyway, keep going.
I mean, I also think what was really, I mean, this is another like typical Riot decision, but they didn't have anybody on the cast or the desk from the LPL for an all.
Why would they? Here's the thing, Monty.
Like, I get that Dagda used to do the LPL last year, but he's a full-time LEC this year. Like the desk was Chronicler, Dagda, and Azael, and the cast was what? Medic, Vedius, and who else?
Kobe or something? Was it Kobe? I think it was.
Like how does this keep happening?
Yeah, and also, I'm just going to say this. The thing I don't get is this. If you don't watch the LPL, yeah, you're going to go, but I love Medic, but I love Kobe. Like, I've said before, I don't know what happened to his career. I think that Lyric guy is fire, mate. I think he's really good. A bunch of them that do it, like Hysterics is good.
Nymeera's excellent.
Nymeera's good. There's loads of them are good, mate. You can and they're also people, they're not like noobs. They've never been on a show. They're speaking English all the time. It's like they speak Chinese, for fuck's sake. So I don't get it, mate. And also, I'll just say this as well. I actually think we talked about this before. The real sleeper OP in casting is Atlas, mate. That guy's so fucking good, it's mental. And instead, he's just on like LS's stream doing the final. What? Like, you guys have just missed the fucking boat on all these. Because here's the thing. I'm getting quite bored of this, actually. I'm sick of every international final. Me, someone who considers himself like a semi-analyst at best. It's not even my game. I'm just watching it like, what are they talking about? He doesn't play that champion. They don't play that style. Macro, like, bloody hell, it's mental, mate. Have you done your homework? What's going on? Because the other thing as well is this. The way I always know, Monty, these people are whack, is one of the reasons I can recount history is because I'm watching it week by week, so I know how the narrative changed. As you say, they go to League Gamepedia, they look up Thorin, and then they see, he's like 16 and 5 on Gragas. Thorin with his legendary Gragas here. It's almost like Fakers LeBlanc. Shut up, you fucking idiot. You just saw that now. You didn't even know the context. You didn't even know he played it 5 times, and the other, like, whatever, fucking 12 was the other 2 years before that in totally different meta on different fucking teams. You know what I mean? Like, these guys are fucking mental, mate. They just talk out their ass. And the reason I can't handle it, I'll just tie it back in again, is I actually think this is the wackest thing about League of Legends, bro. I had to see this in StarCraft, and I could never vibe with it. You know, in my game, CSGO, when we watch a tournament, yeah, we're Europeans, most of us all. They're North Americans. We just care about the best team. If the best team's from Russia or Brazil or fucking wherever, they're just the best team. And no one's trying to downplay them for some weird fan service. No one's trying to play up some shit team for no good reason. Essentially, if you're an analyst or a caster on the CSGO major, you're trying to be the best analyst watching the best teams and the best tournament. And this broadcast is an LEC LCS fan service. They act like this is like they like the Chinese broadcast for the LPL, and then this is like Western. It's like no, this is supposed to be the best English-speaking people doing a broadcast of the World Championship. On this case, the mid-season invitational. Like, give me that vibe. Don't make it sound like you're biased. Don't make it sound like you're downplaying JDG or some shit like that. Or hyping Faker like he's still a fucking god. Give me a break.
I also get that you don't know who's going to be in the finals necessarily by the time you make the casting decisions, but surely you should assume that all things being equal, there's probably going to be at least one LPL team.
Has any LPL caster ever worked the final while an LPL caster? I'm going to guess no, right?
But usually you at least have, like, usually Riot will at least have somebody on the desk. You know what I mean? Just one person on the desk, right? Even when they have been stupid and not given those casters access to a finals. And I get having one of your LEC or LCS casters on the finals as well. you know, it draws in that audience. Like, these people are not bad at their jobs when it comes to analyzing the game. Sometimes they can be bad at their jobs, in my opinion, of knowing the storylines of the teams and the players. But surely you plan to have one LPL guy on the desk. Nope, nobody. They're just like, well, Dagda, you're good enough, even though this iteration of JDG didn't exist while you were casting LPL. Like, you know, this iteration of BLG didn't exist while you were casting LPL. These are functionally new teams. You have to have somebody to be the voice of reason on the desk in that scenario or on the broadcast. Why is it so hard when you know the most likely results of the tournament to make this a reality? It's embarrassing. And like, why are we in a world where Atlas is on LS's co-stream and Captain Flowers is on Dom's co-stream? Like, if I'm LS and Dom, if I have opportunities in the future, I'm just going to start paying these guys. Like, fuck it. Here's an example. Why doesn't Cadril do this? Cadril had like 40,000 concurrent viewers. If the new meta of casting is, as we've seen from Riot, well, Cadril decides he would rather co-stream rather than go to an event where he's already been confirmed as talent, right? So he just gets out of, he could just go do it on his own. So doesn't that apply to everybody else? If I was one of these guys, what I would be doing, trust me, they make so much, Cadril's making so much money, he can literally pay the talent more to appear on his co-stream than Riot will pay them to go to the events. So if they're going to give me co-streaming rights and anyone can just bail on casting a major international tournament, why would they do that? Like, if I'm Cadril, I just go to Atlas and be like, hey, want to do Worlds together? Fuck it. You know what I mean? I'll pay you more. I'll give you a percentage of the revenue of the stream that I make during this time period.
Also, listen, I think I've said this before. I can forgive you all as fans. When I wasn't working in broadcasting, especially when I hadn't gotten to actually know commentators and talked about their styles, I couldn't see the technical difficulties and the nuances and all the little techniques and stuff. And I used to think certain people were overrated. I told you I used to think Quickshot was overrated. I didn't know how good he was because I thought his game knowledge isn't good enough. That's not even his role. Then meanwhile, certain people I thought were amazing were like LS wasn't as good on camera when he first started as the analyst for the LCK. He was actually a bit whack. It took him a while to be concise, etc. So you all think the best ones, the goated casters, they're just people who you like or like their voice. Like, I know, look, Captain Flowers is a good play-by-play in the sense that he can do the machine gun style, he can sort of tie some loose imagery together, and he can put the emphasis on the name of the champion. Like, anyone can do that, though, with enough practice, right? Like, I could just pop in now, like, oh, and here we are, Evil Geniuses inside the game. Danny, he's been looking to get fed all game long on the Aphelios, but it's okay, he's sticking around because EG's putting in the gold. And in comes a gank by Gamersnock on the Lee Sin. Oh my goodness, what's that? Evil Geniuses, they're just trying to get to Worlds. When they get there, oh, it's the top player with all the gold in the end. The CEO's coming down because she's going to have to carry everyone. Like, bro, look, I've never even done that before. Like, I just popped out of my ass 1 second ago. My point is, if you liked my voice and I was American and I had like a big Easter Island head, you'd be fucking, oh, the goat. The goat! You'd be fucking worshipping the goat more than fucking Hollywood. Anyway, that's the end of that. Put the clip master. That's where it ends. That's onto the YouTube.
I think
TikTok,
Captain Flowers is quite
good,
witty as well.
But don't go
It's
too far.
good.
Don't go too far. You know. He's no Saticus.
Yeah, he's more fun to hang out with than Saticus is. Though.
Unless you Danny.
Tell you that.
Unless you Danny. You know. What did he do? Take him an all-you-can-eat buffet? I'm here all week, mate. I'm here all week.
But I just wonder, like, what the end result of all of this, like, co-streaming stuff is, because if this is the path that Riot wants to walk, I mean, what's so wild about this is that how do you even know what Riot's going to do? Because a couple years ago, they basically invented a rule to punish Captain Flowers for saying that he didn't want to go to Worlds. Which is that the rule they invented was after Captain Flowers announced he wasn't going to Worlds and was going to be streaming the games the same day after American time.
That's right.
Riot made up a rule that said you can't actually stream the games until 24 hours after they've been played. Tell me what the point of that is. You're not competing with the broadcast anymore. That was a rule specifically invented to spite Captain Flowers for not going to Worlds. And then now they announced co-streaming. Cadril signed on for this event, and then it's all of a sudden like, oh no, Cajal, you can go co-stream now. That's totally fine. Like, the problem with making any plans is, how do you know what Riot's going to do next? Like, you don't. They could give it to you or punish you or take it away at any given point in time. It's wild. How do you live life like this? But if I'm thinking about the scenario where Worlds is coming up, honestly, I would rather team up with one of the co-streamers and make that money rather than actually do the main broadcast, because then you can do all the games too. It's more fun.
I'm just waiting, because here's the thing. You remember what they did to Dom? Remember what they've done to the LS over the years? I'm waiting, Monty, for where someone tries that, though, and everyone forgets you're not in CSGO, and here's what's going to happen. Someone's going to get a giant sponsorship. They're going to get the core streaming. They're going to be waiting, and something's going to happen. Either during the event, they say the wrong thing, wrong person comes on, they get it taken away, massive scandal, or right before the event, like a day before, like you're saying, the whole thing just gets taken away from you, and you just realize it's always a fucking, you build your house on sand when you work a Riot is the problem. So the problem with that is, it's one thing if they do like CSGO. Like, I don't know if you know this, Monty. In CSGO, they've just embraced the core streaming now. They know that like certain streamers, like the certain skin trader guys, have their own meme fans. There's obviously all the foreign language ones. They just know that that's the only way now that you're going to top the viewership out. People know from Valorant, you've got to have Tarek there. The joke, if he isn't there, even though he's not like even the good fucking commentator, it just takes like a third of the viewership away. If Shroud doesn't watch, you don't get that viewership. The problem is in League, everyone knows Riot won't just do it in like self-interest in terms of like good for the game. They always also have to sort of like fuck with you a bit and send a message. So I'm also so scared for those guys that like if they start planning that as their career, I agree with it. It should be an alternate way to go, but there's just that world where Riot, it's like, they're like Reddit mods, mate. They just try to find a reason sometimes to take something away. It's like they'll just retroactively, they'll reverse engineer a reason why this person has to lose core streaming for this event, you know, until he sort of like, you know, gets back on the porch, as it were.
Yeah, I just don't know
like
what
a good dog.
It feels like they never actually think far enough ahead to what the ramifications might be for these actions. Like, it is really when you basically incentivize people to do their own streams rather than participate in commentating your events, which I mean totally makes sense for the finances of the people involved, but just as a caster and somebody who deeply cares about the art of casting and it being a viable career, it sucks to watch some of this go the way that it's going. Because if I was in a situation with a lot of the casters and I'm sitting there watching, you know, Cadril and Dom and LS make tons and tons of money, like 10x as much money as I'm making from casting the event. And the thing is that the co-stream meta isn't even like replacing the commentary. It's not an entirely different commentary track. They sit there and your voice goes through, if you're a caster, your voice goes through their stream and provides a lot of the entertainment. But all of the money goes to the co-streamer, right? And yes, I'm not saying co-streaming isn't hard. I respect the fuck out of these guys who grind it. It's very difficult to do. But at the same time, it's weird that the casters are getting paid so much less when they are providing content on the co-streamers' streams themselves, if you know what I mean.
By the way, if no one did see, you got to look up that clip where before the like Cloud9 when they were down 0-2, when Yamato did like his version of like the speeches he would do for his teams at Worlds. But they had like, here's the thing, spoiler, if people don't know this, what makes hype trailers 10 times more hype is just having like Interstellar music or something like that behind Hans Zimmer or something.
The music was so funny.
Yeah, but he did such a good, you know, you could reach down inside each other, find that inch of gate. No, it was really good. It was funny, actually. It was good. Was fire.
It was
you can't
also
get
like
on the broadcast.
Cliched, intentionally cliched thing ever.
Of course.
Because it was supposed to be a joke, but it was.
No, you did a great job.
It was really, really funny.
That's also, by the way, a reason why I prefer the core streams in general. First of all, not only, as I've just complained about, am I not getting the best possible product on the LCS stream in terms of professionalism, expertise, but even worse, like they can't. Here's the one thing they've never been able to do on the international broadcast. They can do it regionally. Internationally, they can't do jokes, bro. They're so bad at it. They all trip over each other. They don't know like if you have like Kobe with many events, well, then they don't know each other's vibe. Like they don't know each other's in jokes and little angles or how to use each other. So like, whereas like people know, for example, example, like Medic basically always, he's like a counterpuncher. He waits for Venius to do something silly, then he makes a funny joke off it, then Venius comes back with like, it's sort of, oh gosh, Hugh Grant, I can't believe you that's wrecked me there, Medic. Like, and then everyone likes the little double act, don't they? It's a Laurel and Hardy thing. You can't just throw someone in the mix there and think they're just going to be as good. It doesn't work. So to me, the other thing about core streams is the entertainment value is mad. I don't know if people know this. When I do the CSGO core streams, I would even think to myself sometimes like, because I don't like to be dead air, like, maybe I'm talking too much. Like, I should actually get the analysts to talk more. What I realized was we're doing it for hours and hours and hours. They're going to get all their points off. But actually, when there's nothing going on, actually me talking and telling some fucking anecdote, story, stupid riff, that's entertaining. What it means is if the game gets boring, I can entertain you. Like, core streams do that. You know, on DOMs, you're going to get inside info from Europe or some battle between Gilius and Perks where they're flaming each other. On the LS one, he's going to have endless amounts of things where, like, the joke is, it's like, he's like the ultimate, like, he's like essentially the fucking Super Saiyan level 7 React bot, because it's like, right, the draft's lost, like, kick this guy, like, he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, he doesn't even know fundamentally how to use this champion, he doesn't have hands, like, it's brilliant. You get all these mad takes out there, like, that's entertaining as fuck. I love that shit. I'd be loving that shit. And Atlas, by the way, was also killing it on that. That's why that guy is goated. Fuck your SEL captain. Atlas is goated. Atlas can be the super professional, suit and tie, looks slick as fuck. It's the LCK, ladies and gentlemen. It's the finals. We're in the 11th seat. He can do all that. And then he can also go on that, by the way, and know exactly who LS is and play into humor and jokes and have fucking silly things and freestyle. Oh, mate, those core streams are the shit. They really have, like, given new life to League for me, mate.
Yeah, look, they're really fun. Like, I enjoy co-streams. My point is that it sets a very dangerous precedent with the casters because Riot, the problem is this, guys. If Riot was actually paying the casters market value, then perhaps, because we know what Cadrill's market value is because he has 50,000 concurrent viewers on his co-stream, right? So we know what he can make per hour from co-streaming, and that should be reflected of his per hour performance on Riot's broadcasts, because apparently he's a massive draw, right? And the issue is that because there's a monopoly that Riot has where they just set caster rates and there isn't a competitor to say, here's some better rates to draw you over, they are underpaid. They are underpaid. So I think it's really rough to be a Riot caster right now, because unless Riot decides to give you co-streaming rights, then you're kind of just shit out of luck. But I do think there's a way to create very like entertaining alternative broadcasts with those Riot personalities. And if I was a major co-streamer, I think that's what I would be seriously considering for the next international event. Like, make it a whole business, make it a whole brand.
Yeah, it'd be sick. Right, what now?
I don't know. Not that many matches to talk about this week, just because of the way the format shook out. There is.
I'll add one thing for people who don't know. If you didn't watch, like, we only did like one LPL episode, and we didn't really get around. We only had Orcs cast on for part of it, and then he actually was like sick or something, had to leave after like an hour. He pulled like a Chinese team at Worlds where there's always one guy ill, just like, oh, I'm underperforming, shit, help, and then they just go home after 2 weeks. Right? We never really did it. So if people don't know, are you ready to get terrified? Right, it is true. Tabe coming in changed things. They switched up some of the things in BLG, but like they had to start way early in the playoffs, guys. They were like the 5th best team, and they won against a bunch of big squads. Like, here's what you don't even know. This could be even more scary at Worlds. You could have JDG. Let's imagine BLG can make it. Let's say they can still be top 3 and make it, right? The 3rd team can be like EDG, Mega Macro, a bunch of nice rookies. Weibo has like the Shy, Zhao Hu, Carson. Then you have like
Top
fucking
the roster to
Top Esports has Tian with fucking Rookie now, not Doimy, Rookie, and has a bunch of like skilled players as well. Jackie Love, the 3 teams for LPL for Worlds could be bangers. So there's another thing, mate. Now, after we've seen these flaws in these Korean teams, listen, KT was fun. Hanwha could do the odd thing a lot. That 3rd and 4th seed from the fucking LCK, they better level the fuck up this summer, mate. Because the LPL is going to be really strong at Worlds.
He can hang with them, but the 4th seed might be a little bit difficult.
By the way, there's one thing we should mention. That was the one cool thing they did mention at the end, is that the 4th seed for either LCS and LEC is going to be a playoff between the teams at the end of summer. That's fire. Because you also guarantee that you actually have you have a real Ace versus NA versus EU, guaranteed best of 5. Awesome. Who wouldn't want to watch that? Remember, that could be, think about it, that could be like BDS or Vitality against like fucking FlyQuest or EG or something. I mean, the joke obviously would be it'll be Mad Lions. Or whatever. Well, that's just for the humor of what went on there, you know.
Yeah, look, there's also some news that just came out that apparently the LCS Players Association is trying to get LCS players to walk out in protest of the
Well, I want to go into this actually, because I saw people mention, and they've nailed it finally, Monty. It took years for people to understand this. They understand now what in CSGO no fan understood. The only power you have as a players association, as a semi-union, is to withdraw your labor to make demands, at least to go to the negotiating table and get a compromise. That has always been the function of the union, right? You can say nice things and have powwows and meet together, and we're listening to each other and having a lot of dialogue. You can do all that political shit, but at the end of the day, the only way you can force certain actions is to say, I won't play. Now, this, I think, here, Monty, is so insane. Not only do I think the people running the Player Association are insane, I'm just going to go ahead and say I don't think they actually, if they think about it, have the players' best interest in mind. Because, as we said, Academy wasn't some straight fire second league. It's like the LDL or something. It was even a place where it was like a semi-retirement home for a bunch of washed players, like Mash Me and fucking people like that. You'd be like, they're still playing from season 2. Oh yeah, they're still getting salaries. And so in this scenario, what you're saying is, oh, hey, Fudge, you know how you crawled up your whole life through Oceanic region, Academy, you came to Cloud9, now you're in a top team. By the way, you're probably even on the chopping block if you fuck up this year at Worlds, mate. You know that scenario. Oh, you know, hey, you know, Prince, you know, you just came over and you're getting paid megabucks to be the star of FlyQuest. Here's what you need to do. Stop playing, which would mean in theory, by the way, you actually potentially might not get your pay for that, because a bit like the NBA, you actually have to play the games to get paid. That'll be in your contract almost certainly. You have to put your job on the line in the hopes that your own team, the people who pay you, by the way, and Riot somehow, reinstate Academy. Like, if you know anything about player unions, this is what happened in CSGO when we had a player union. The player union only gets formed with the help of the big names. And I'll tell you one thing the big names will never do. The big names will never fight for the small names. Why the fuck would I give up in CSGO my $25,000 a month so you can get like 1,000 more? Bro, that's my 25K a month. And I'll tell you right now, if you know players are the most skill chauvinistic people in the world. Their logic, if your logic goes like this, I'm not fucking going to some Academy guy can get his shit. I earned, man. I'm on top. I deserve. I'm entitled to that.
Also,
money.
They also think that they're always going to be good. So
he doesn't ever think they'll be an Academy. Yeah,
it's only gonna. I'm never gonna be there. It's only gonna go up.
I think this is mad impractical. I agree, it's the right way to do it, but it's so impractical. I don't think it'll have any effect personally. And I'll just throw this out there: because it's franchised leagues, it's the ultimate place where you could do what you call scabs. You just bring in other players. Guess what? If they won't play, I'll bet right now there's some fucking player that'll come and step in and play a game or two. And how long will they wait?
It's also that so basically, if there are teams, which there are, that are trying to break even on League of Legends based on the $2 to $3 million that they are receiving in revenue sharing from Riot, basically there is effectively going to be a salary cap. Is it going to be officially a salary cap? No. Is there a conspiracy among team owners to basically cap salary, like team salary caps? Probably at this point in time. I would say that that's the way a lot of them are most likely thinking about things. And so if that's the case, if we want an academy system and we're the players, that inherently means that some players at the LCS level are going to be paid less money. So why would they vote to do that to themselves? Yes. Right. I think that's the really hard part of it for me, but apparently they are trying to get a vote done on Sunday, according to this leak, where they're going to vote to walk out on the LCS. Now, the LCS starts on June 1st, by the way, which is next week. It's kind of shockingly soon. Even the LCK doesn't start until the 7th. So, and I think the LEC starts even later. So it's been a really quick turnaround from MSI. Not that there wasn't a lot of break time, given how early the NA teams were eliminated from MSI. They did get more.
People want to know, just as a joke, but it's true. I started planning content around when I saw where they were in the bracket, and a lot of them were available. Who knew? They had a week off, didn't they? By the way, I forgot to mention earlier, this is how stacked the LPL is. I didn't even mention the team the fucking MVP scout plays for, LNG, with Tarzan. Mate, you guys, you don't know how deep the LPL goes now, boys.
Here's a fun one. Gala and Ming have left RNG, and Gala is rumored to go to LNG, which, considering
that'll be interesting,
that LP was one of the major factors as to why LNG wasn't better than they were, replacing LP with Gala. I mean, I don't know if they're going to replace Hung, their support, as well. It seems like the rumor is that Ming might take a break. But if Gala goes and Hung either works better with him or they get a different support, Zika's a really good weak side top laner, in my opinion. I really liked watching him play. But as soon as they have an actual secondary threat, that LNG team is going to be fucking scary. Like that was a team that punched way above their weight class based off of Tarzan and Scout's transcendent performances, right? And so if they get a real like kind of tertiary threat on that team, that is going to be a very good team, and Gala can certainly provide that.
Oh, by the way, I have an update on a couple of things. One is just because I heard it when he streams, right? I actually love when European players, because we do this as Westerns with like Asian names. I love when European players have only ever seen a name written, because remember, they play them a million times in solo queue, and some of them don't listen to the broadcast. And so when they pronounce the name, they fuck it up with their accent. So if you hear Yankos talk about the player for G2 in the jungle called Yike, he calls him like Zika, because he means like Yika or something. Like he fucked up the whole word. Yeah. So anyway, the reason I'm bringing up Yankos is I've got some more Heretics news. If you don't know, in our ever continuing segment called "What the fuck have Evie and Ruby been up to today?" Spoiler: Ruby's fucking off to China apparently, but Evie is back again. Evie from Japan, everyone's favorite potentially fraudulent top laner that Dom definitely is given the new fucking Ryoma treatment to. Basically.
Isn't Ruby going to TSM? Like, oh,
yeah, but then they're going to China. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly.
I
mean, at this point in time, by the way, like essentially Dom's haters, he should just call the group the Tommy Knockers. That's what he is, because Ryoma, you look it up. It's an old school reference to a movie. You can look it up. Anyway, so Evie, there's a guy, he's called Arnaud Vidal, and he is the founder and co-owner of Team Heretics. And obviously Evie's been, I assume, off in like Japan on holiday or something, you're going home or whatever. So he said, in Spanish, I translate, he goes, Ebby just arrived at the office. He runs into Werlib. You remember that old top laner for like SK and Mad Lions? And he goes and says, "Oh, hi, Haw." And he goes, and then, so this guy, Arnaud, goes, "I can't believe it. Ha, ha, ha." And then Ebby replies in English and goes, "Oh, wait, is this bad word? I learned this phrase from CL." You know, the coach, the assistant coach, when he was from Rogue, he goes, "Sorry if I'm rude," and puts like emojis of like sweating. Dude, remember, this is the guy before, like, oh, like, you know, I'm feeling really bad or whatever. He's like, you know, like, well, like, you are trash or whatever. He kept saying like, "This is mentally," just walks by, "Hello, Haw." It's like, fucking hell. This is outrageous. Because you know what? I can't believe this is leaking out there, Monty. You know this. When the first Chinese teams and players came over, oh, don't worry, all the NA players thought that was funny to teach them all the rude words to say and all the rest of it. But you guys don't know they're going to go and say that in public. They're going to go to someone in like a server at a Burger King and say something, "Hello, Haw, can I have Big Mac?" Like, mate, that's only funny on like Jackass, not funny in real life when he gets his actual ass kicked. Like, so anyway, there's the update on Ebby. I just like, here's the problem. I do think he's really bad at League of Legends, but I just want him to stick around as a character now. He's sort of like a Kramer-esque character, you know. I want him to just bust in the room, do some zany shit, and then fuck right off.
I also like how everything Evie does is translated through other people who don't speak
exactly
language. So it's like even funnier in many ways.
What a world.
Too good. All right. Well, I don't know if we've got anything left to talk about as it relates to current news, guys. So I think we'll probably take a quick break and come back with some viewer questions.
Right, we're back from the break, and we're going to answer some viewer questions now. If you would like to support us and in exchange get access to ask us questions on the show, which we sometimes answer at length, sometimes I just sort of break them down completely, shit all over the person, and then in quite a rude way sort of imply don't ever pay for them again. But if you're not one of those people, you won't be. Let's be real. That doesn't happen to you. That happens to other people. You're the cool cat who's going to ask just the right question of Monte and Thorin, get exactly the answer you want to get. So if you want to support us, you can go and subscribe to our Discord, Last Free Nation, and then there's a channel. It'll be called SI Questions or something, so many Insight Questions. You can just put your questions there, and Monty will pick through them.
Yep. Okay, first up, do you think that Viper for Pays would be a viable trade? Even though Pays has been great, Gen.G has not been able to perform to expectations on the international stage since 2017. HLE would save money and get a young star ADC, and Gen.G would get a world champion ADC and Viper. I think the problem is that Gen.G didn't have the money to pay Ruler. So why would they have the money to pay Viper? Like, I think they've been pretty transparent about that. And I think Pays has not been the main issue on this roster. Like, Pays has done his job, guys. He's, for a rookie player, he's performed really well on the big stage. He was excellent throughout the LCK playoffs. Even in those stadium matches, he was fine at MSI. The problem is that Doran can't consistently be a second threat, carry threat on this team in terms of solo lanes. Chovy forgets how much he's learned over the past couple of years when he's on an international stage for some reason in an elimination match. Like, he just forgets how to play the map. Peanut will also get too hypey and over-engaged. Like, they have a lot of problems that need to be solved just from the mentality of the players. It wasn't Pays that caused them to play weirdly against BLG. You know what I mean?
What I would say is this. I think actually, like, you might not understand the business aspect there, because first of all, right, if you're Viper, you played in the LPL for all those years, I imagine you want to get paid when you're back in LCK. I would bet dollars to donuts, Monty, that Pays gets less in Gen.G than Viper does in HLE. Viper's one of your star signings in HLE. This is where, like, you get the bag. It's like when my boy Aaron Rodgers was on the Packers. Oh, it sucks that his teammates are bad. He was getting the bag, mate. In fact, half the problem with the team was he took all the fucking money. He was taking the maximum you could possibly take in his contract. So if you're Viper, I imagine you're going to be downgrading your pay to go there. Now you're going to go, but you're in a better team, right? First of all, who says who said Hanwha Life is going to let you go? I wouldn't if I sign you for $1 bazillion. I'll say, but remember, Hanwha Life was in the top 4. I would say to Viper, do your fucking job and we'll beat Gen.G, mate. I'm paying you out the arse to play in this team. So I wouldn't let you go there. And when he says that, what you've given away there, mate, I don't blame you. You don't know the Korean scene. Is you think Hanwha Life is tiny. You think because they're not a good team that they're a small, like, farm team who could use the money. Hanwha Life is an enormous sponsor. And look at the team they have. They signed world champions Zika and Kingen. They have Clid, who used to be on a whole bunch of teams like T1. They have Viper. They have, like, dude, they're probably spending fucking cash money. It ain't a good team. It's got flaws, but I'll guarantee, like, actually they are a team with money. So I don't think they are going to go, you know what? Thanks, actually. We weren't at MSI, so why would we give a fuck how Gen.G does? But since Gen.G didn't beat BLG, I tell you what, give us, like, I don't know, a few 100,000. We're probably spending millions on our payroll. Give us a few 100,000. That, you know, it's not like we keep the money. And you can just have our best player, our only chance to actually go to Worlds. Remember, top 4 teams go to Worlds. Why would I give you my fucking best player? This is where fans forget. This isn't your birthday party where you get to, like, make the rules up for the game. Hanwha Life have their own interests. And in this case, if people don't know, I remember when they became the sponsor, I was told by people in Korea, like, this is a huge fucking company. They're probably actually putting money into this team.
I also just don't think Pays is the problem. Pays has been really good. Like, you have so many other issues.
Domestically, yeah.
Well, even at MSI, Pays was fine. He wasn't the reason. Like, Peanut fucking threw away game 2 of that series. Like, nobody forced Peanut to WE engage and then just not put any pressure on the Jinx and just lose the game. Like, there were winnable games. There were winnable games for Gen.G that they threw.
I know, just throw this out there. The reason why that sponsor is a banger is because if you actually know in Korea, that is a famous brand of, like, life insurance. And if you don't know, here's a little base take for you. If you ever watch a movie, go watch the movie Memento. It's actually a subplot in that. Essentially, the entire job of the really good agents at life insurance places is to find a reason not to pay out the life insurance. It's actually one of those things that's like a mad dark topic if you ever look into it. So I imagine that company's fucking doing really well, boys. Really well. And like I said, they were only 4th, mate. They're not a million miles away. They're not a million miles away. I don't believe they can come 4th in the league.
What is your opinion on Dante's Divine Comedy? I enjoyed reading it. I haven't read it in many years, but it's not my favorite piece of poetry, but I'm also not reading it in Italian, so it's okay. It's okay. Worse than Paradise Lost.
I've never read it. That's the sort of thing I don't care about. One thing I do not ever do is here's the thing, mate. I've had my bachelor days. I've sold my welders. I don't need to be in a coffee shop with a fucking book cracked like that, looking cool, like with a scarf on. Sort of like, oh, yes, I'm reading. Oh, I'm just going back to the old classics, Dante, bit of Virgil after that. It's kind of who I am. It's kind of, I'm kind of in and out of courses at the moment, thinking of changing my major. I'm not doing that shit, mate. So essentially, if books are like hard or old and there's not like a really compelling reason to read it, I'm never going to get to it, mate. Still too many great books I haven't read that are awesome modern books. So it's not my shit, mate. It's not for me.
I like older books. It's just not one of my favorites. It's okay. Bigger scam, what Peter Zhang did to TSM, or Earth 2? What is Earth 2? Do you know what that means? Okay, I don't know what that means.
I mean, it's a brilliant fucking JLA one-shot trade paperback by Grant Morrison, where the premise is they go into a mirror universe where there's like Batman, Superman, and the Flash, but they're all cunts and they're all evil, and they actually run a crime syndicate of America where they're like fucking up the only guy who's actually like Lex Luthor in their world is like actually the good guy trying to, because it's a mirror world. So Earth, that's a banger. Yeah, it's great. But I don't know what you're talking about. Like, was there a second Earth released that Zoomers now live on that I'm not aware of? Like, am I on the wrong one? Am I in the boomer world? Is that what's going on?
You have to understand, guys.
Oh, apparently it's a TV show. I don't know. We'll look up what it is. I've never heard of this, mate. Earth Tip.
Whatever.
Was it the sequel by David Attenborough? Did he just, did he go right? A person was so popular, he sold out and did another one.
If you don't provide context.
Oh, this is from the 90s, apparently. I don't fucking know.
How do you feel about high skill MMO games like Lost Ark? Is there a place for games like this within esports? And if so, is there any game you'd like to see flourish within the space?
I've never played this
game. There have been esports made out of like Black Desert Online, at least in Korea, for the dueling mechanics of some of these games. I personally don't like MMOs very much, so this isn't really my world, and I don't really care about seeing esports within it. I think it's hard because it's very difficult to watch. I mean, watching WoW esports is miserable.
I just don't care about MMOs, so I've never played one. Oh, I played Ultimate Online back in the day.
For MMOs, I liked the kind of race to world first. Like, I think the guild stuff that they do when the new patch comes out and they're trying to defeat the big bosses as a team, like the PvE stuff is more compelling to me.
Oh, by the way, I know what people are referencing now, because apparently, because Targamas is apparently going to like Carmine Corp, and obviously he was kicked out of XL. Like, here's what's hilarious. I've obviously reported, I did a video where I heard all the stuff from behind the scenes about how XL was using like unlawful shit under German law and being pressuring people and being dicks to them, giving them more and more and more things to do, hoping they'd fail so they could claim like, you breached the contract, even though it wasn't even in the contract. Apparently, Targamas has done what very few players will do, which is when XL 2 hours ago did a tweet like, as we look ahead to the summer split, we part ways with and say farewell to Targamas. Thanks for everything, and we wish you all the best wherever you go next. Heart emoji. And then he just replied, he just put, I will not thank you for what you did. God luck anyway. Fair play. That's funny. That is funny. I'll give you that. That is funny.
I did hear that Targamas had some attitude issues, but
I mean, I would if I was a dickhead team like that.
Sure.
Mate, I'd give him more attitude than that. You can come see me.
We were promised the best format for MSI. How come I see 4 teams in the bracket stage that might not even make it into LPL playoffs playing against the world's best teams? Great question. Because Riot insists on not filtering those teams out through earlier stages of the tournament and not actually prioritizing qualifiers that get the best teams to MSI. It's better than it was. Could it be better? Absolutely. Choose a LoL champion and swap their ult with another of their abilities, but it has to be an improvement. Similar scenario to what they did with Tom Kench.
What was the switch they did on that?
They made his eat ability where he eats a champion into. They swapped a regular ability with the ult. Basically.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so we need to change. Essentially, we need to take an ability that's like overpowered and make it the ult instead. Is what they want.
Yeah, but it has to be an improvement. Okay, here's what I would do. I would create I would change Blitzcrank's hook to his ult, but like extend the range and make it a really crazy skill shot. Isn't there like a Dota champ Pudge? Doesn't Pudge do that? Just have like the insanely long
Really
hook?
long, yeah.
Yeah, I would do that. I would do that.
That would be pretty sick, because if people don't know, the reason that would be awesome is actually that's when, if you were like a carrier and the game's going to shit, you could do some hero shit and just fucking win the game, mate.
Yeah. So I would do something like crazy like that with a blitz hook. That would be kind of fun.
I don't know about design ones, man. I don't pretend to know about design. Don't give a shit.
What are the biggest examples of players you thought would be bad, either by their play or some other reasons, who completely proved you wrong? When Ruler, like for example, when Ruler debuted under the idea of Bung, I thought he would be a budget knockoff Bang. He went on to become one of the GOATs. I mean, the obvious one is Smeb, guys. Smeb was fucking terrible, and he became one of the best top laners of all time, if not the best. He was really bad. He won the Long Panda Award for being the worst top laner in Korea.
I mean, I've said on the last episode of Golden Guide, I always thought I couldn't even believe he won fucking LCS that went to MSI Finals. Like, I thought that was one of the worst players to make that ever. That's why a lot of it I put down like coaching staff, draft, fucking Afro Moo. Like, I still don't know how they did it, mate. So I actually think he became a pretty solid NA player now. Like, he's as good as the imports. Like, he's actually a pretty legit player. And look at the longevity he's even had. Role swapped, everything. Yeah, respect. There's one. I'm trying to think. There's got to be some LEC ones that I thought would be trash that are actually way better. Let me think. Oh, the obvious one would be fucking it's only for a split, but that guy 113 in Astralis. Dude, when he began, he was fucking bad. He was totally terrible. Like, he wasn't even that good, I thought, in Carmine Cup. By the end, actually, when Astralis was winning and getting in the groups and mixing it up, he was actually doing some pretty good stuff. He was pretty decent. Fair play. There you go. There's a couple.
A lot of god tier players in esports have always been stuck with a trash teammate seemingly by choice. Mad Life and Space, Shocks and Smiths. What god trash player combo is your least favorite in esports? It's a good question.
Yeah, what would it be? I mean, the obvious. Are we doing? Because he said esports, not League of Legends. I'll do a CS:GO one. If people don't know, part of me still thinks that the best year of Simple might have been the year 2018 when Astralis was the best team. And this is all you know, right? Back in the day in CS, it was only extremely rare they would ever let you win an MVP award if you didn't win the tournament. This is how goated Simple was in 2018. He'd never won a major. He didn't win a major until 2021. But the reason we all called him the GOAT in 2018 is because Device would win all the tournaments and get quite a lot of MVPs. And Simple had almost as many MVPs and won something like 4 tournaments the whole year, 3 tournaments. He would get the MVP when Device's team won the tournament. Like, that's how far ahead he was. But in his team, you might be going, well, if he was the absolute best player ever, how did he not win the tournament? Because he had a really veteran player called Edward, who ironically used to be a great player in 1.6, but was like a support element. And he was just essentially a feeder at this point in his career. But he was so legendary, and he played all for Na'Vi most of his career, that they just kept him around for like 2 years too long. And this guy, for real, would do stuff like when Simple would drop the 40 bomb, he would drop the 4 bomb. And as a result, if you just averaged, it's like you couldn't win. Like, you actually were trying to be better. Like here's the thing. If you don't know, guys, to be 1.5 times another good player's hard. You can't be 2 times every game. So Simple actually did lose series where he had like the greatest series ever. And he would just lose the series. So there's a classic one, because essentially the feed just made up for like how fed Simple was. Like, it was crazy. That's a bad one. I mean,
mine is Kuro on any iteration of the Rocks Tigers. Was my least favorite one, because I think it legitimately prevented the Rocks Tigers from like a very dominant run at international competition, and also playoffs. Very, very weak.
It's an old school one, but I'll just say it anyway. Helios and Flame. Helios is another motherfucker just living on years gone by. And it's like Flame was the best top lane, and this guy was his jungler. I don't know about that, mate. That's an old school pull, but I had a lot of hate for that guy, put it that way. And then also when they pulled that shit where his brother, like Paragon or whatever, went to like NA, like and made himself like I put myself in, coach. Remember that when he just made himself like the ADC or something? Like, what? Like, there was some wild shit going on then, boys. There's some wild shit.
What do you think of Faker's current form? Should he retire soon? Based off recent performances, is Faker still the GOAT by far, or is any other player like Rookie closed the gap? No, I don't think anybody's closed the gap.
Can't you tell, Monty? They don't know what Niski and Faker do. They think they're just mid laners. Have you noticed that? They think like you could just take like a better laner and just put him in the team and it'd be the same. It's like when they asked for Peanut to be replaced. Right, listen, Tarzan's way better than Peanut, but you're not going to have the same style. All your macros going to go in the fucking bin instantly. Like, yeah, that's the point. Like, it's not. We didn't even think Faker was going to be the best mid laner. That wasn't even on the table.
Look, Faker was really good domestically, and I don't really understand this. Like, yeah, Faker had some quite bad games, I would say, at MSI. He was a liability. Does that eliminate the fact that Faker probably had his best split in like 4 or 5
Oh,
years?
he's mega.
This split, he was really good. Faker was responsible for a lot of the mid lane picks, like Gragas coming back. I think he's still fine. He does his job on the team. The problem is that both he and Zaya seem to not be able to perform at high stakes international events now, which I think is a bigger issue.
Just go back and watch, like, when T1 beat Gen.G in the upper bracket final. Like, you'll see some good games from Faker, mate. He wasn't a bot. He hadn't even had a JS game there that was good.
Yeah. Try to assemble an EU team plus coaching staff that has the highest chance of going deep in 2023 Worlds, ignoring existing contracts. What playstyle would your team have, and why would it do well against Eastern teams?
Okay.
I mean, in theory, look, the current iteration of G2 with more consistent. If let me put it this way: if you took G2's current roster, and we're talking about you get peak caps back, right? Really good caps. I mean, I think it's a very good team. You maybe replace the top laner, right? You replace Broken Blade, and people will say, "Oh, Caps had a bad tournament, and Broken Blade actually looked good at MSI." Yeah, but if I have to take players at their peaks, I'm not going to take necessarily Broken Blade in the top lane. Like if Alfari could be back in his top form and come back, that would be potentially a good team. But I think the style is good for G2. You saw they released their scrim win rates again, and they had an over 50% win rate against the top Asian teams at the event. I think they're weird to play against right now, which is a strength. They just need to get their individual performances up to snuff.
Here's my team. Are you ready? I don't give a fuck, mate. I go hard as a motherfucker and I ride or die. So top lane, Odoamne, you're already so fucking upset, aren't you? Because idiot, I like BLG. I love streamlined teams, Monty. I love a team where we know exactly who we're playing through, what the win conditions are, and what the picks should be. I don't want there to be an argument in draft. So Odoamne, best weak side player Europe has ever produced. Also, can just be really good. He can be as good as the weak siders at the international level. Then I'm going Jankos as my jungler. You'll see why I'm going Jankos, not El Yoya, when you see my mid laner. Because my mid laner is Larson, the best mid laner in the LEC. You don't know that because you have no eye test. You think it must be Caps on Iski because your brain is broken. That's okay. You will be out on that one forever. I will continue doubling down and I will be right. Now, the reason why I've gone as a result of Jankos instead of El Yoya is because I just think El Yoya and Larson, like, Larson's not like the leave lame, roam fucking 24/7 player. Like, I don't think they'd work that well together. So Jankos, the best probably mid laner ever, jungler ever at reading the map. He can help all the lanes out. He's not going to have to help top lane. Spoiler, Odoamne is on that fucking desert island, isn't he, talking to a coconut the whole time? When we just come die every now and then with a fucking boat, bring him to a team fight, doesn't he, on a fucking Maokai? So we get Jankos, Larson, bot lane, are you ready? Oh yeah, it's upset. Oh yeah, but you have to play through it. Yeah, I'm only playing through upset, motherfucker. I know the way my bread's buttered. Larson's in lane farming, and we get upset, all the way fed up. And do you know why no one's going to be able to get you upset and gank him? Because one, I've got Jankos to cover for him. And who's his lane partner? Good old Mickey X. Oh yeah, that's right. Engage God. We're just going to put little Mickey here. He can even pop out the cheeky Heimerdinger if he has to, just to fuck your world up. And who am I taking as my coach? Dylan Falco. That's right.
Yeah,
a guy who went through TSM, Fnatic. He's been through the most cancer environments ever. Then he went through Schalke. Then he was on this fucking good G2. Like, he's just proven at this point in time. I think he's always great. So smart with his draft. He knows his players. This lineup, I think, would be banging. And yeah, that's right. I've set the whole thing up for upset to carry fucking Worlds, baby. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I like it.
I'm always going to stay on brand. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about
that. What NA lineup do you consider was internationally speaking the most competitive, regardless if they ever attended an international tournament or not? For example, this year's FlyQuest team. Well, I mean, the C9 roster when MSI didn't happen, I think probably was going to be yeah, pretty competitive internationally. So that's a kind of a bummer. I mean, obviously the C9 team that got to World Semis very legitimately by 3-0ing the Africa Freaks was quite good. I think in the early days, there were teams that potentially could have competed well internationally. The 2014 TSM team at Worlds did quite well for NA standards. Like maybe 2011 CLG probably 2010, 2011 CLG?
Let me think. Who would I take for this one? I mean, there was a year, if people don't know, when top esports didn't go, where they were still like the third or fourth best team in the LPL, and they just fucked up the bracket, and they fucked up the regional. There's that. Rookies had some years where he was absolutely goated at a level, but IG just shitted the bed, and the Shy just perma-inted him. There was the one where FPX had fucking Khan, and then he just ran it down in the regional. If you don't know, the regional in LPL is one of the most brutal fucking gauntlets you ever played in your life. Like, because teams turn up there that shouldn't even be good and just beat you. Like, Suning just goes to Worlds for no reason ahead of you. Like, that can happen a lot of times. So there's actually plenty of teams that haven't won in League that were mega. I thought the Gen.G team last year was fucking mega. That was another team that on paper looked awesome the way it was set up. Very streamlined as well.
Yep. I mean, those are NA teams, but yes, those are good
points.
Oh,
it has to be an NA team. Who gives a shit about NA? Grow the fuck up, will you? Grow the fuck up.
All right.
I'm not from America.
All right. Should the volatility of the Paris major Swiss system in CS have us worried for Worlds this year? Yes, we've been saying this. It's
especially
terrible.
Because the biggest flaw of the Swiss is the seeding. Initial seeding ruins the whole tournament. So the problem is, by definition, Riot does not allow real seeding. At least in CS, you can come vaguely close. They might allow like a tournament sort of thing. They would never even be able to make a seeding system, Riot. So I think it's going to be terrible. I think you are going to see, I've told you before, you will have a stupid ass 1-1 match between two Western teams. So one of them will get 3-0, 2-1. Like, you'll have all sorts of shit happen. You'll have a top Asian team manage to come like fucking 9th when they're actually really good because they get the worst draw ever. It's going to suck. You'll see. You'll just have to wait and see.
What historical battles, this is a question for you, what historical battles would you like to view as a replay from Counter-Strike free cam plus individuals POV? So if there were any like famous moments that you could kind of use as a demo, like view from a demo, I guess is the question.
Here's what I don't get about the question. Have you ever played? It's already in POV. What the fuck are you talking about? It's not League of Legends, you know. You're thinking of Smite or something. What?
No, I think it is, but maybe from a different person's POV than was shown on the main broadcast. Just the freedom to control.
Well, the most famous one ever is when Simple did that godlike 1v2, which was a fluke with the AWP against Fnatic. The Prius, the observer, was on one of the Fnatic people, even though it was a 1v2, and traditionally you always put it on the one. So that was not caught on the broadcast. So it was only, that's why famously Bardolph did the call. It's not FPL, because when he did the replay, you saw like, what the fuck, that was a no-scope. So like, he didn't catch that. There's been a bunch in CS. Look, in CS it's harder because obviously you could have 3 battles take place on different sides of the map at once. So there'd be a whole bunch famous in history, I'm sure, if you go back.
Having met Faker, is he independently aware of his fame and knows how to present himself as a face of T1? Or is he a League of Legends robot that just completely follows the directions of his PR team? Faker is exactly what you see, man. There's not really a difference between on-camera Faker and behind-the-scenes Faker, in my experience.
Oh, by the way, I think Twitch chat might have this right. I think they fucked up there. I think what he meant was it was CSGO style POV and free cam, and that they meant a real historical battle. So like obviously like the Battle of Thermopylae or something from fucking like Leonidas POV, like God can bleed or some shit. Oh, the free cam of like jokes like I'm a Chandler Scott or whatever. Like, it's already the movie 300 as far as I go. But no, he means that, I think.
What was that Russian sniper at Stalingrad? That's probably
one. No, Finnish one. Oh, I don't know. Oh, you mean the one from Enemy That Gates? You mean the one that they based the movie on? I don't know that. The obvious one to me. I'm amazed that they haven't made a modern movie of this because they did them in the 70s, but they didn't have the quite like tech back then. How has no one made a god tier like series about like Napoleon, mate? If you don't know Napoleon stories, like they almost have to be fake because they're too good. They're better than anime. Like they're actually better writing than an anime. Like the way they go.
Yeah. He was like just a guy in his early 20s who started being a military.
The way he leveled up's like completely seems implausible. Then if people don't know, he was doing
himself emperor. What a badass.
He was also doing stuff like he was literally in the battles, like constantly beating. By the way, not just early on in his battles, he was actually beating like all of fucking like he would simultaneously be beating like I don't know the fucking Habsburgs and Great Britain and their empire simultaneously with like less forces, just like outmaneuvering them all and drawing generals into battles and just wrecking them on the. Oh, mate, like I say, it would just be like the best anime ever, basically. So if we could see that with all POVs, it'd be sick, wouldn't it?
I would actually watch a Napoleon anime. Why
Would be
Japan? Get on that.
The problem is, though, when I say that, though, I want a real Napoleon one. I don't want like Napoleon, but then I also spends time at a fucking high school with a bunch of girls that are all interested in him. But one's like a bit sundry and one's all, come on, I don't want that shit, though. Get that shit the fuck out of there. Make it real. Make it good. That was the part about Code Geass that kept drawing me out of it. He kept going to fucking high school. And then, like, even his teacher was in it. I can't handle this, mate. What are we doing here? He's trying to, like,
Really?
rule the world. This is mental.
You don't want the high school romance between him and Josephine?
It's so stupid,
Josephine character.
I can't handle it. It's so stupid.
Oh, Napoleon Baka.
I know. Exactly. And then he's like, oh, no, I don't know what to say. Those little effects. I can't handle it, mate. I'm out. Get me the fuck out.
Anyway, as to the Faker question, yeah, he's really not different than he is on camera. He's very low key, very introverted. Yeah.
It's very boring, if I'm being real.
It's very boring.
Yeah.
Boring, guys. I don't know.
It's like that. I've always told that story. It just reminds me of Fantasy, the legendary fucking Terran player for T1 in Brood War. That when they did an interview, they said, "What are your hobbies?" And he was like, "I don't really have any." And they go, "No, aside from playing the game," he's like, watching the game and studying the game. Like, he actually is just boring as fuck. Like, he's like a monk, but for StarCraft, basically.
Yeah. Thorin alludes to knowing many dark secrets, and I assume Monte has some knowledge too. In light of this, is there a moment either of you could time travel to make an EU team win Worlds?
Ooh, let me think.
If so, when, why, and how? I mean, the obvious one is Moscow 5 Season 2.
Oh, we said it, the Bad Niddly one. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. The other one is like, here's the problem with this. If I time travel on this one, I've got to do a couple of things here, Monty. So one is I need to go all the way back to spring in like the playoffs of season 8, and I'm going to enter the Fnatic house. Obviously, Records immediately dives better. So no, not for that, Records. I'm not here for you, mate. That's later. And also, why is Thorin all older with like a grey beard? So don't you worry about that. Shut the fuck up. I'd go in. I'd just go up to my mate, actual friend of mine, Soaz, and I'd go, "Don't break your hand." Like, what do you mean? Don't punch any desks. Because if you punch desks, I'm just telling you, this is the end. What do you mean? I'm one of the. What are you saying? I'm one of the greatest top laner ever, and I will never play fucking Renekton. Renekton is not my champion. I play Kennen. I go, all right, mate, I can barely understand you at this point in time, and you also, fucking hell, you've even eaten camembert again. But anyway, just don't punch the desk, because if he doesn't punch the desk, Whippo never gets sent into the team. And if you go to Worlds, I have to do one more thing now. Then I appear like a fucking anime. Oh, my word, I just appear behind fucking Katie Roaster, don't I? And I go, watch out, this is not a bot lane meta. IG is fucking going to smurf on you with the shy. So just play safe as fuck under tower, and then let's just try and get some late games and get Death the chance to win. KT beats IG. Soaz is on Fnatic. They go to the finals. My boy Soaz, map movements, macro, Caps is fucking moonwalking all over these motherfuckers. Reckless is actually carrying, who's pretty good in that tournament. Hiller-Sang's at his best, finding the angles, coming in, coming out. Brox is just watching, going, "Hey guys, I'm helping." Like, what should I do? Nah, he actually had a good lead in back then, to be fair. Although he could do that. You know, I also tell them, just get the fucking Xin Zhao and just get the Scuttle. Just get the 2 Scuttles. That's all about. No, fuck macro. Just get the 2 Scuttles. And then basically, season 8 for that. Can you believe that? I've actually just made Reckless a world champion in season 8. But it's worth it for Caps and Soaz to win. Exactly. That's the kindness of my heart. I would make Broxer and Reckless world champions of League of Legends just so my mate Soaz could win it all. There you go. What a good guy I was in the end.
Beyond the Moscow 5 one, CLG EU also potentially had the opportunity to do well at Worlds. So here's what I would do. I would either go back in time and tell Yellow
don't let the
Arcade step forward into Skarner.
If you see Skarner, just get the flash away. Exactly. That's the one moment in your mind, isn't it?
Away from Skarner.
That is the moment, yes.
Skarner. That's one thing I would say. And the other thing I would do is honestly be like, "Hey guys, CLGEU, I know you love this Yellow Peak guy, but you actually are part of the CLG organization. So what if Double Lift came to your team for Worlds instead? Think about that one. You swap 80 carries to maximize CLGEU's chances. I think maybe you can win Worlds with that roster." There is an alternate timeline where if they had actually engineered the 2 CLG rosters properly, they could have potentially done much better, right?
This is a troll answer. They obviously wouldn't win Worlds, Monty, but I'm going to troll you with it anyway. I would just go back basically to the night before Alliance played Kaboom, and I'd just go like, guys, well, put that drink down. Listen, after tomorrow, let's take care of business, throw out the trash, and then the drinks are on me. Listen, Wicked, put that down. Drinks are on me. Because I tell you what, if they won that game, I want to at least see them in the fucking playoffs. Can I at least have Alliance in the playoffs? Can I have that? Instead of them being the greatest meme ever for losing that game to that idiot fucking guy who had like 214, 58 deaths or whatever, like whatever that guy's name was, the fucking top laner from that team, who was that meme image. They lost to that. I can't handle that. That's one of the worst losses I've ever felt in esports, mate, that Alliance Kaboom lost. It was so shit, it was unbelievable. There you go.
Pick a champion for each role that you would call the king of X, like the king of top lane. Basically, which champions either return to viability over and over and over again, or how they function as a great encapsulation of the role itself. King of top lane, probably Gnar at this point in time in the game. I think Gnar is perpetually meta, one of the most interesting champions in terms of versatility. King of the jungle is obviously Lee Sin.
Has to be Lee Sin.
Yeah, it has to be Lee Sin. The king/queen of mid lane, arguably Orianna.
Probably for longevity reasons.
Yeah.
Or Rise, maybe. One of the two, I think.
Yeah.
Just another classic one. It'll always be viable, I think.
ADC. Ezreal, maybe. Like,
we're not going to pick any of the modern shit. Spoiler. We're not doing Zeri. Like, we're not doing that. It has to be a real one. Yeah, it has to be something like that.
Well, basically, we're choosing ones that have had longevity over a variety of different metas and have versatility. Like, Ezreal is still like a playable champion and has been played, significantly even into the modern era. So it's not that it's the best. It's kind of like what champion sort of encapsulates the idea of the role. And then support, probably like Thresh.
Can't really go wrong with that.
Yep. What was the first game you really got into when you were a kid?
It means esports games, I hope. Not like fucking playing Doctor or something weird. What the fuck are you talking about?
I mean, the first game
Monopoly.
that I like, video game that I got into was probably something like Reader Rabbit, guys. When I was a very small child. The first game that I got into really as that could be considered more of an adult game was probably Warcraft 2. The first esports game I got into was StarCraft. So
we're doing like games in general. I used to be old school and play like the Spectrum and those ones with a tape. So it's actually the classic game, if people know it, Arkanoid, where you have a bat and a ball and you're breaking these things like that. And it's like different powers coming out. Shit. It's the fucking shit. It's a really old school game. For esports, it's just Quake. The original Quake made in like 1996 or whatever it was. Banger game. Little detail trivia for people who won't know this, because think how differently the game became, because it became like deathmatch and multiplayer. It, like all the games like Doom, the original plan was it was a single player game with just additional thing. Let's just make it multiplayer possible. It was supposed to be a single player game. And if people don't know, what's crazy is the reason why Romero went and did that shit Katana game that failed is because Quake was supposed to be that. It actually was supposed to be some mega fucking ambitious project as a single player game, where the reason they had the Slipgate teleporters is that was just going to be one set of levels, like a medieval theme with like nightmare shit. There'd be other ones like futuristic, and it was going to be like some great thing. But the problem is, like, this is when people get like all the money and they think, oh, I'm going to do the greatest shit ever. And you do some like 70s cocaine movie where it's just like too ambitious. Like, he essentially was doing that, and they just had to tell him, like, literally, like,
Katana was such a hilarious fail.
If you go read the book Masters of Doom, it chronicles all this. I even did an interview with the guy on my YouTube channel, and basically they just had to tell him, like, look, it has to ship on this date in like 1 year. So they just cut all that down and just made it what Quake is. And the joke is, the afterthought of multiplayer is what spawned the entire fucking esports scene in the West. So like the afterthought was actually the craziest part. It was essentially tacked on, a bit like Brood War. People don't know StarCraft Brood War is supposed to be a bloody campaign for Brood War. StarCraft, like, it's supposed to be a single player game essentially.
I mean, League of Legends was a mod for Warcraft 3. I mean, Counter-Strike was a mod for Half-Life. All esports were accidental. Fortnite was not supposed to be what Fortnite was. You know what I mean? Frankly, I was getting increasingly bored seeing the likes of Sion, Gragas, Wukong, Vi, Annie, Jinx, Aphelios get picked over and over again. With more than 160 champions in the game, why did only 20 to 25 of them see light of play at MSI? Surely there are more viable champs that can, especially in the context of countering the meta or countering the counter meta and so on. I'm aware pros have limited time to learn new champs, but shouldn't the relative champion strength outweigh player proficiency at times? No, because a lot of the weird champs require vastly different ways of playing around the game. Like, For example, some of the ideas that LS has, they're good ideas like Ivern or Soraka mid lane, right? But the problem is that they require the entire team to play in a different way. And if that one champion gets banned or countered, then the entire practice falls apart. The issue is you really only have so many hours of practice. So it's really difficult to deviate from some of the stronger picks and some of the more meta picks.
Also, it's that thing again of like, why can't everyone just play all the champ? They can in solo queue. Like, what you're asking there is like, why can't you? Why would like player proficiency matter more? Because we're talking about the best players in the world who are the best on that champion. So when you put that player onto the fucking Lee Sin, you put him onto like even a K'Sante or fucking the fucking what do you call it? The Zeri. They're the absolute best player in the world on that. So now, like, even your counters don't always work. Like, you might have a pocket pick Cassiopeia mid that you can play, but can you play it into Knight's Jace? I don't know about that. I suspect not. So I wouldn't even try, which is why they don't. Spoiler: they do try these things in the scrims. What they find is when they get their head smashed in, they don't bother playing it on stage. You know, they're not idiots.
And I mean, they played Nautilus jungle for the first time in a final, the game one of a final.
Yes.
So I actually didn't find the MSI meta horribly boring.
I
kind of enjoyed it.
The problem with this is, right, it's like you say, LS's context all makes sense and is really innovative because it only comes from his mind alone. You have to have all 5 players buy in to make that work. If even 2 of them are like, I want to play standard, you're going to have a really bad time. So you'd have to have essentially... The joke is like, don't even tempt him. If this machine existed, he'd do it. You'd have to clone 5 LSs, wouldn't you? And have them all play the game at once. And then you'd finally get what you want. The joke is he'd just clone Selfie 5 times.
You know, we saw a couple of games on Cloud9, which were fun to watch, but on a long enough timeline where teams start to expect that and start to plan for you doing that, I don't know how well that ends up working, especially against really good international teams. Again, your entire way of playing can be stripped out by certain bans or counters. And then if you haven't practiced standard play, where does that leave you would be my question.
Oh, and by the way, here's the other reason why the 5 LS clones wouldn't work. It'd end up like fucking what the Prestige or something. Like, can you imagine the drama between the 5 of them? You know, like fucking hell, one turns up sick, the other one's dog's having problems being sick or something. Like, oh, I'd be fucking mental. This one, oh, did he screw me? Well, I should have had that pick. Oh, they'd be mental. The infighting would be too crazy, guys. I wouldn't be able to handle it.
Do you guys know of any other cases in sports such as Faker where a very clutch player falls from his prime and starts underperforming in crucial moments? Because Faker used to be very
like
clutch.
All of sports.
Yeah, sure.
Every great player ever in sports.
Yeah,
like,
eventually they get old, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If you take only the last 2 years of his career, you would probably just call him a choker. I mean, he has won domestic
because he
titles.
played for too long. Remember, he could have retired in like season 8, and everyone would remember him as like not only the GOAT. It's like Jordan; he would have been untouchable if he'd retired in like 98. No one would even be able to conceive he could be better. So, in some ways, it's only because he's let Showmaker and fucking Chovy and these guys beat him up, rookie, that it just looks like he's not that good anymore. Like, if anything, it's actually amazing. I spin it the other way, Monty. I know you do. I'm just impressed he can even still play vaguely at this level and find a different style and make it work. I think that's insane.
We talked about this previously, but basically none of the Brood War Bonjois had the same level of have been able to compete at the top level for as long as Faker have and continue to win titles. I mean, it's very unusual that 10 years later we would have the same esports player still winning titles. Okay, guys, I don't even know how to approach this question. How did Hamlet, Lear, and Macbeth influence Western culture? Like, in every possible way.
I mean, to be fair, loads of movies you don't know just Hamlet, Lear, or Macbeth, basically.
The Lion King is Hamlet.
Yeah. Just, no, loads of them are, though. Like, there's loads of movies that...
Hamlet.
Loads of movies that have the same concept, you know, like you're with a woman, but then she's like, actually, is she cheating on you? And someone gets in your ear like an Iago and he spins a narrative against you because he was. Essentially, what happens is the narrative structure and the archetypes are so well handled that you can just impose other themes over the top. And especially if people don't know what this referencing, they're just going to go, this is awesome.
Also, I think Hamlet is arguably the greatest piece of art ever created. So
I'll even say this. I think Macbeth inspired what happened with TSM.
That's an interesting
or was that King Lear? You decide. That's the debate question for today. Was what happened in TSM with Reggie, Doublelift, and Lena? Was that King Lear or was that Macbeth? You tell me. Answers on a postcard.
It could have been Hamlet.
Could have been either. Could have been all of them. Yeah, he could be the son. Doublelift could be the prodigal son, obviously, of all of them.
I mean, Hamlet did watch his mom get, his dead dad basically get cucked. I'm just saying.
Also, there's that saying, one swallow does not a summer make. But then you tell me how Doublelift got back into TSM.
That's a good one. But yeah, it's just a language. There are people like Harold Bloom, who was a Yale scholar, who actually, his theory is that Shakespeare invented the modern human identity, which is a very bold claim, basically, that the way that he dimensionalized his characters caused basically everyone to think differently about themselves and deepen their philosophical takes. So it's hard to overstate how much Shakespeare, and especially the seminal dramas, have had an influence on especially Western culture. It would be a very different world without these. What's the worst prisoner of the moment storyline that you've sadly found to have stuck as an accepted thing? I don't know if I really understand that question. Prisoner of the moment storyline?
It means as in, like what I was just saying about the Bin one. Like Bin's now the best top laner in the fucking world. Or Uzi, I think it's the Uzi I one, personally. I think that's one of the most outrageous ones of all time.
Yeah. A lot of it's just going to boil down to the majority of the Western fan base not watching a lot of the Eastern matches and then just thinking that the finals that they saw or an international tournament were the entirety of that.
They just don't understand how crazy the sample size in LPL is. Like, it's not like, guys, I'm saying it's like LEC when you used to have like 18 games into a playoffs, right? It's not like I missed a bunch of because think about it, in that format, Monty, essentially you only played the other good teams like 6 total times or something. You played 3 of them twice in a split. So you're thinking, there's not that much more. When you play in the LPL, I have seen like fucking 70 games of this guy, and you've seen like 10, and you think, oh, I know better than you. Well, then you're a bloody idiot, aren't you? Like, what are you talking about? So the problem is, it means you can get super exaggerated stories. Also, there's a reason why LPL enthusiasts used to call it the Worlds buff for Uzi, because at Worlds he would just inexplicably go to his max level. Then when he was back home, I don't want to hear that shit of like, well, he was just chilling then. No, the greatest players of all time just put it in day in, day out. Day in and day out, they're the best, mate. You can't, I didn't, well, then you weren't the best. You weren't the best. The reason why I say, and I don't give a fuck what you think, that Peyton Manning was the best quarterback ever, is because if you just watch every game, including all the regular season, I don't think anyone ever played the position better. There you go. I don't give a fuck if you don't like that. Have you got one, though? What would be a big one for you? A big prisoner of the moment, one like that? Like who got locked in because of a big performance or the win or something like that?
No, I think we've mentioned most of the ones.
Oh, Marin. There's a classic one, Marin, right?
Yeah, Marin is a huge one, actually.
People still cite it to this day like he was a god, mate. Yeah.
I mean, Bengi's another one, obviously. Like,
by the way,
saw him win 3 world titles.
That's why I actually said, I think it was Fionn posted a picture where it was that goated trophy haul that Faker has. Here's what they forget, Monty. You know when they used to say that line that drive you crazy? They'd go, Faker never won Worlds without Bengi. He literally won 2 MSIs without Bengi, even playing a single game. So you know when they used to say, Bengi, the right hand of God? Well, then in that case, Faker's so sick, he tied one hand behind his back, started slapping bitches. Oh, by the way, that reminds me. I'm glad you all now finally know, because Knight has been really good internationally, how sick Chinese and Korean nicknames are. He is left-handed, if you don't know. That's why he has that godlike kung fu top of the dojo final boss, the golden left hand. That is his alias. His nickname. That is sick. That is fucking sick. What a sick nickname. No, Bengi's one of the best of all time. You forget this, guys. Up until like season 7, dude, that was the real narrative. People weren't even just saying like Faker can't win without Bengi. They were like, this was real. Bengi is the second greatest player of all time. Oh, and
God, get me out.
Please, no. Like, that was a real take. That was a real take, guys. Yeah. Yes, that was real.
Richard made a video about esports fans not being willing to pay. I am a paying esports fan. I pay to ask you 2 questions. I paid for Richard and Thorin's Patreons. I've attended events, bought merch, and even paid for old OGN access. But with all of that said, I would be hard-pressed to give a dime to Riot, Valve, ESL because I don't feel any connection to those entities and the value they produce in the space. So, how can those entities convince someone like me who is clearly a fan and willing to support esports /content creators, but frankly view most of them as scumbags who just happen to make a cool video game or monopolize the tournament calendar? I mean, you answered your own question. Like, those entities are not going to convince you because 2 of those entities in Riot and Valve, and then a 3rd one in Activision Blizzard, and a 4th one in Ubisoft. The problem is that they are not creating an entertainment product that you love. The reason why you gave OGN money was because OGN was really fucking good at what OGN did, and they created something that was lovable and that you had an affinity for. They did that because that was their job, was to create a great entertainment product. Now, the job of the publishers and the developers is to market the skins in the game to get microtransactions. And this is the core issue with esports, is that the publishers have a different goal than teams and tournament organizers. Now, in ESL's case, they were dramatically undermonetized. Like, ESL's whole thing up until recently, when they got money by selling to the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund, was how can we dominate the calendar by spending as little money as possible while being on air for as many hours as possible. They were not making an entertainment product. They were making a monopoly product that was just grinding out the same garbage over and over and over again. Now, I do think that they are changing with their new mandate, but that was just true previously. So I think Blast, for example, makes a lot better content. I have a higher affinity for Blast as a entertainment product than I do for ESL as an entertainment product.
The problem is this: you have to basically do a very, very bold move. E-League did this. You've got to make it so that the normal free broadcast is, 1, probably max 720p. You don't get any 4K or 1080. Bit 2, it can't have all the best casters and the best show and all the features added in. You can't have that. It's got to be very bare bones. Maybe you can have like an amateur caster or a B-stream caster or something, and you just have the basic game with the basic observer still moving around. You get like some casting, and that's what you get for free. 720p, that's it. But if you want 4K and you want the best casters in the world, Machine and Sponge, Scrawny and Lons, and you want like a proper desk with like Yanko and Mouse Snake and Maniac, and then you want side content where I come on and I have a talk show with a bunch of the players at the end of the day. If you want all that, that's what you pay for. That was your pass that you paid $10 for, and you get all that shit, just like the UFC or something. Like, the joke in the modern day, I'll give the best example ever, is stuff like the UFC. It's like, I used to back in the day every now and then get sent a link and watch it. In the modern day, when I have money, I would actively choose to fucking pay to watch the UFC. I want the best quality thing with all the pre-game thing. I don't ever want it to drop. I want all the shit like that. I want to watch the whole card, and I want to not worry about it. I want to put it on and just fucking sit back. So the problem is, no one has the balls, because at the moment it's an attention economy. No one has the balls to take the initial hit of going down because you've given them all it for free. That's the worst thing Blast did. They gave you it in 4K for free because everyone's in an arms race of VC to the bottom. And so I think if someone was bold like that, you could easily make a very good pay-per-view product. Like, it would be awesome with what I'm describing, side things. You can maybe even have a secondary stream where like they're just analyzing fucking moments in the game. Oh, there's so many awesome ideas. It's just, they're so short-sighted in my opinion.
Yep. But
and
also
we'll do
like,
some of that shit, so don't worry.
Yeah. And when your question is like, frankly, view most of them as scumbags who happen to make a cool video game or monopolize the tournament. They are, guys. They are. Like, Riot is a scumbag company. Like, you already give them money and attention. I mean, I don't think they're not going to convince you otherwise, because they can't, unfortunately for them, they can't put the genie back into the bottle about what scumbags they are. So who cares? Support the people you like within the space. That's the best way to do it, guys. Just support the people you like. And thank you for your support of us. That's very helpful. We watched Bjergsen waste his talents on TSM in his early years, hoping Berserker doesn't become another Bjergsen. Should he pack up and go back to LCK before it's too late? I'd love to see him back in the LCK, frankly. Sure, why not? I would have loved to have seen Bjergsen in Europe in his prime. I think he could have done a lot more damage on an international stage. I also think that Berserker can probably make more money in the LCK than he can in the LCS right now, depending on which team he goes to. So we'll see if he even sticks around after this year.
I mean, if you put fucking Berserker onto like, let me think, probably like Live Sandbox or something, sure, wouldn't he immediately be a pretty good player and give him a chance? I think, yeah, he could mix it up in LCK.
Thorin keeps hinting video win. That one is really hard, guys, because the things that did happened a long time ago, but are also super bad. And there was a time when ESPN Esports was trying to do a piece on what happened. It never actually came out, and I'm not sure why. The problem is that you need a lot of confirmation from Korean reporters who really don't want this story to come out and are difficult because reporting in Korea it's not really a free press system. And there's kind of a conspiracy that bad stories can't come out because it might hurt the esports industry, because it has in the past, such as what you saw with the various match fixing scandals in StarCraft really damaged the overall esports economy within Korea. So there is more or less a conspiracy among people who know in Korea to suppress this information. I think it's a very delicate topic, so it's hard to put out there. But what do you think?
Problem with that logic is, think about it, right? If I hint at something, like the question, what is it? Guys, there's a secret that I can't tell you yet, but one day I will. Question, can you tell me the secret? You're not even any guile to this. Like, trick us into it or something, for fuck's sake. Spoiler, you think I wouldn't just drop a banger if I could right now? I mean, I will one day. Like, for example, if you don't know this, by the way, they're not happy. I was the one who dropped the banger right at the time as well. I didn't even give it any fucking breathing room about what I think about certain sister teams in T1 in season 4 in that first split. I think that looked very, I'd at least investigate that. Let's put it that way. It looked like a bunch of matches happened in a way that was inconceivable unless you had a certain end goal you were reverse engineering. So if I have bangers, I drop them. We're not, like, in this particular case, the whole point why we're saying we have to hint it is because it's just not something we want to discuss right now. And it's ages old, mate. It's ages old.
Yeah, it is big though. It'd be a very
but
there's a lot mixed in with that.
Even though this shouldn't be answered because it's not a Twitch chat thing, I do want to say one thing, which is I'll tell you an example of where I actually am sick of fans telling me about my knowledge of the game and how much I know. Because do you know this, Monty? You're going to love this. You know, all of Reddit thinks Yike is like a god because of how G2. They don't get the concept of the champion he's playing, how they played for him. It was early. They're idiots. They think he was like 1v9 smurfing and like the rest of G2 held him down. It's like, bro.
Why do they like Yike so much? What is it about Yike?
I'll tell you my theory. I've got a psychological theory. I always analyze this from the human angle because they need to believe, Monty, that there are players who are amateurs and young and inexperienced and have never been at the top, and secretly they're better than everyone else. You know why? Because that's them stuck in bronze. They're secretly way better, and you don't know. But if they actually got in there, dude, they'd be better than Fudge and Cloud9. You've never seen their Fiora. You don't know what they'd do if they got in a fucking mid lane and they got their Azir out. Like, they just been held. All they're waiting for is a break, man. It's like fucking out of show. Just give me a break, man. I just needed a break. Like, it's that fucking loser mentality. It's why they love underdogs until they turn to watching.
It's the same thing that happened with Danny. Like, Danny was a very good player within the system that he was playing in, but he was still very clearly
there was a prisoner of the hype moment, mate. They were making him sound like the new double lift. Do you remember? Oh, like, look, the Prince of Pentacles.
I mean, like, you know, Yike has played well, but I'm just saying he's still a rookie, and that's fine. Why can't we just say, man, here's a really good rookie player that they're playing around just like they did with Danny, and just be appreciative of that? We don't have to pretend that he's like the jungle messiah who has just emerged, right?
I don't think he was better than Yel Yoya for 1 second in his life. No. There you go. And spoiler, neither does G2 because they tried to get El Yoya, mate. Come on. Anyway,
also Yankos. I mean, anyway,
goes up
the two of you have a noted disdain for underdogs, but what are some of your favorite sports/esports underdogs? I mean, DRX was a great story last year.
Was it one of your favorites?
Yeah, if the underdogs actually like win the title, it can be very entertaining. The problem is that that very rarely happens. That's the issue. It's usually the underdog gets one upset and then chokes immediately, and then you get a bad, shitty next match.
Did he say sports as well?
Yeah, sports as well.
I can give you an esports one. In CSGO, it was when the Finnish ENCE team made like the final of the majors, and they even later on beat Astralis and broke their streak at a Blast tournament. Because here's the thing, if you ever look at that team, one, Finland has just never been close to the top in CSGO. They were vaguely good in like CS 1.6 years before. They're a tiny country. ENCE is an org that never has taken to this day any VC. They're just running like an old school esports business, min-maxing with tiny salaries relative to the biggest teams. It's only because it's an open circuit they were able to do this. And on top of it, they did it because their IGL, an upcoming guy called XCB, was just like a genius caller. And then basically a couple of their players, he figured out how to use it. And they didn't even have Monty, a real like top 5 player, even vaguely close. The team skill level was probably lower than most of the top 8 teams in the league, but they had like a style of play they made work. They had the right meta, the org being overpowered. The caller did a good job, and they just can't. They had team play. It really was like a brilliant underdog run. And they were very good. They were like number 2 or number 3 most of the year, basically. So I thought that was an amazing one. Like that's one where you won, and it's like it's not even, like it's an upset win, but it's like, mate, you deserve to win that game. You actually outplayed the opponents. And then the one I'll give you is, for basketball, I always did think that the 2011 Mavs run, the one where LeBron choked in the finals, was an amazing one. There's another team that had no business winning. Like, beyond Dirk Nowitzki, the rest of the team just wasn't very good. It was a bunch of like old veterans and people who were like throwaway second and third options. And Jason Kidd was like practically in a wheelchair at that point in time. Like, oh, it was mental. The idea they could win, they had to win by the finest margins in the final. But then before that, they were even blowing teams out with 3-point shooting and stuff way before everyone did that. They had Peja Stojakovic. So I just thought that was like a sick one-off run. It could never have worked for more than 1 year, but that 1 year, it was one of those ones, everything just came together for like almost like a movie, basically. Have you got any sports ones that you're a fan of? Underdog ones?
I mean, I think that the Giants upsetting the Patriots in their perfect season, their undefeated season, was definitely one of my favorite ones.
Just outplayed them, mate. It was balling.
Yeah, I think that was, obviously, like, I'm not a Tom Brady or Patriots fan, so it was especially sweet for me. I think that was probably one of the bigger upsets, obviously, of all time in American sports, and it was really fun. All right.
Oh, by the way, my other one, look, I'm biased, but obviously when Liverpool won the fucking Champions League in 2005, when they were down 3-0 at half-time, they scored 3 and then, won the fucking penalty shootout, and they beat AC Milan in the final, who was way better than them, by the way. Loads of those players deserved the medal. Like, that was mental. Not least because I'm one of the people who didn't stop at half-time, like a little bitch. I just kept watching and got to see like a movie. Like, I actually thought, it was one of those moments where I almost thought my mind was controlling reality, and if I just kept going, and it happened, it all fucking happened, did it? So that was pretty good. It's pretty good. Istanbul.
Yep. There you go. Okay, that was our last question for this week, guys. Like I said, we're going to try and do something special next week in celebration of our 200th episode, even though we've already passed our 200th episode. And then I guess we're just going to be, assuming there's no walkout for LCS, we'll just be right back into the thick of things with normal Summoning Insight, as well as all of our regional shows returning. So Monty and Wolf, Best Damn League show, Power Spike will be continuing, Power Spike tomorrow. We will see you guys next week. Bye.